Published at 22nd of February, 2019, 12:05 and 4 seconds a.m., Chapter 1628. 1628, there were many good men in this world, but Gu Xietian wanted the most outstanding one for his daughter. Gu Xietian thought that Long Sai would come to visit over the next few days. However, he waited until the 15th day and did not see him. Gu Xietian was somewhat disappointed. It seemed that he had misunderstood the situation. Overlord Long had no affairs with his daughter. Otherwise, if his daughter had stayed a night with him and something had happened, Long Sai would have come to explain. Gu Xietian had been testing his daughter several times over the past few weeks and felt that his daughter had no interest in Long Sai. He began to switch his attention to the men in the Facian Kingdom. He secretly helped his daughter to source for a suitable husband. After he released the news, there were a lot of matchmakers who came to the house to propose. Gu Xietian chose a few candidates that he was quite pleased with. Then, he invited them to visit the house. Gu Shizhou suddenly discovered that there were a few young talents who came to her house over the past few days. When they came, they claimed that they came to visit General Gu. However, Gu Xietian always had excuses to let Gu Shizhou serve them. Gu Shizhou also wanted to find something to keep herself busy, so she did not reject to serve the guests as long as she had spare time. However, after she had served a few, she finally realized that something was not right. When she did not have spare time to serve the guests, these young talents would just linger in the house for a while before leaving. But once she was there to serve the guests, these young talents always refused to leave and always talked to her as long as they could. They always asked her to go around the garden. Every one of them looked at her with watery eyes that were full of affection. It made Gu Shizhou feel uncomfortable. After a few days of being fooled, Gu Shizhou finally understood the intention of Gu Xietian. She thought that it was quite hilarious. She had a long talk with Gu Xietian. She was straightforward to express that she felt very disgusted with this action. If Gu Xietian continued to matchmake her with these young talents, she would kick these people out of the house. Her threat was very useful. Gu Xietian finally stopped looking for young talents, and Gu Shizhou finally got back her peace for several days. Of course, Gu Xietian did not give up entirely. However, he also thought that those young talents did not match with his daughter. He pondered for some time, and suddenly thought of a person, the Count Xiaoyao Long Moyan. Long Moyan was one of the 4 most honorable young men in the capital. His ranking was at par with Rong Jialuo and Rong Che. This person was a very low-profile person. He was handsome, and he was still single at this age. Based on the rumors, he fell in love with a lady, but he had only met her once. After that, he could not find this lady anymore, even after so many years therefore. Gu Xietian invited Long Moyan to the house to be his guest. He told Long Moyan that there was something that he wanted to discuss with him. Long Moyan was happy to come. So Gu Xietian held a banquet in the garden of the pavilion. After they drank a few glasses, Gu Shizhou came over to them. These days were the full blossoms of the plum flower. Every day, Gu Shizhou would come to the garden to walk around and enjoy the plum flower. She did not expect that there was a banquet in the garden, and also did not think that the guest was someone she used to know, Long Moyan. Gu Shizhou had a fantastic memory. She still remembered him. In the past, when she was in the Iceland, she used the identity as Chong Sheng to meet this Count Xiaoyao. Both of them had a good time in the Iceland. She had not seen him for several years. Long Moyan still looked young. He looked like he was 20 years old. He was handsome and elegant. It might be due to his improved spiritual power that he even had an unspeakable honorable temperament around him and looked like a fairy. The pavilion was built in the plum grove. When Long Moyan sat inside the pavilion, it looked like a portrait together with the blossom plums outside the pavilion. Published at 22nd of February, 2019, 6:05 and 4 seconds a.m., Chapter 1629. 1629 Gu Shizhou had a noble status now. Even young masters from rich families had to bow to greet her if they saw her. Thus, Long Moyan stood up and greeted Gu Shizhou. Gu Shizhou was annoyed by these courtesies. Hence, she waved and allowed him to be seated. Gu Shizhou had a relatively good impression of Long Moyan. Hence, she decided to stay for a chat. Gu Xietian was very happy with that, and he just excused himself and left them alone at the pavilion after a brief introduction. Certainly, Gu Shijio felt helpless and annoyed because she knew it was a date arranged by Gu Shietian. She did not want to entertain him anymore and was about to leave with an excuse. Suddenly, Long Moyen sighed. "National Celestial Master, please allow me to ask this question. Were you forced to come on a date with me?" Gu Shijio did not expect him to bring this up. "You're right," said Gu Shijio as she looked at him. "You hate it?" "Certainly. Me too. My father has been pushing me every day, but someone has already won my heart, and I wouldn't get married if I can't find her. Nonetheless, my parents just couldn't stop nagging me." Long Moyen came clean about his situation. Gu Shijio was surprised. "So, I have an idea, but it would be great if you could give it your opinion." "Go ahead. Since both of us hate speed dating, why not we pretend to date and meet every 3 to 5 days? This could probably stop them from forcing us, and both of us could also get some peace." In fact, that was not a bad idea. After all, many young people in the modern era also got people to act as their partner to entertain their parents who forced them to date. She did not expect Long Moyen to know of this modern strategy as well. Since Gu Shijio was annoyed by Gu Ziexin's arrangements, she decisively agreed after a quick ponder. Therefore, they became slightly closer after they came to an agreement. Gu Shijio asked, "Since you already have someone in your heart, why did you not marry her?" Long Moyen sighed. "I cannot find her." Gu Shijio frowned while Long Moyen continued. "Honestly, I've seen her only once. I tried my best to find her, but my efforts have been in vain." Love at first sight? Gu Shijio seemed to be interested to know more. "What's her name? Perhaps I can help you." The Inning Association was now under her supervision, and they were very efficient in collecting information. Thus, they should be able to find the girl if Long Moyen was willing to tell her. Long Moyen said without hesitation, "Her name is Chong Sheng. I've met her at the mysterious Ice Land." Gu Shijio remained silent. Was this destiny calling? Chong Sheng was created as a fake identity. Gu Shijio sighed. Is this considered love at first sight? Maybe she gave you a fake name? Or perhaps even her nickname. Why are you so obsessed to find her? Long Moyen smiled bitterly. I should have known. However, I can't get her out of my mind. Anyway, let's find her first. What if she is dead? Please don't curse. I believe she's still alive. Gu Shijio was speechless. All right, she should find another possibility. Perhaps she has gotten married? If she found her one and only, they'll give her my blessing. However, I must find her and make sure she's done so. Gu Shijio was speechless again. Published at 22nd of February, 2019, 12:10 and 6 seconds p.m., Chapter 1630. 1630 Gu Shijio did not want to reveal the truth. Otherwise, it would be another trouble for her. She pondered and decided to revisit her fake identity as a married Chong Sheng. She wanted Long Moyen to give up on her. Since they had to act like they were a couple, Gu Shijio and Long Moyen met to have a meal together once every few days. Both of them interacted like normal friends. In fact, Long Moyen was a very caring companion. He was quite the gentleman, too. Apparently, he did not see her as the almighty national celestial master. It was 14th of January. Gu Shijio went out for a stroll at the plum garden with the Muscle and Lu Wu. She was in her white jade carriage with a wind caller as the driver. Surprisingly, she bumped into Long Moyen again. Thus, both of them went to the plum garden together because Long Moyen intended to go as well. Long Moyen was riding on a white house, and it perfectly matched the white jade carriage owned by Gu Shijio. One was in the cabin, and another was riding a horse beside the wagon. Occasionally, Long Moyen would talk to Gu Shijio, though the curtain was down. The Muscle was listening to the conversation while it was resting at a corner inside the cabin. Suddenly, it talked to Gu Shijio confidently. Master, he is quite good. I think he could be a fairy in the future. Gu Shijio did not expect the Muscle to say such a thing. How do I know? I could somehow smell an immortal aura from him, and his bone frame is very special. Based on my experience of eating countless of humans, his bone frame is only second to Celestial Master Zhua. Gu Shijio was surprised because according to her observations, Long Moyen had not achieved a level 8 spiritual power. There were many people in the world could beat him. How could he be comparable to Di Fui? She opened the curtain and silently glimpsed at Long Moyen. Somehow, she realized Long Moyen looked slightly more spiritually charming compared to the last time they met. Perhaps he was like a dead majestic item which finally came alive. The blooming period of the plum flower should be in early December. It did bloom once back in December. However, she did not expect the plum flower to bloom again around the 15th of January. It looked like a sea of red clouds as she looked from afar. The plum flower did not usually bloom twice. However, when it bloomed passionately for the second time, the imperial officers would claim that His Majesty was brilliant. Hence, the earth was showered with blessings from the immortals. Certainly, the citizens could not wait to share with their friends whenever they found such an unusual phenomenon. Therefore, Gu Shijiu and Long Moyen also bumped into a crowd along the journey. Of course, everyone recognizes Gu Zijia's carriage. Hence, many people greeted her along the way. The muscle opened the curtain and took a glimpse. "Master, many people are following us." Gu Shijiu saw it as well. All the citizens were following behind her carriage after greeting her. Perhaps they just wanted to get some good luck from National Celestial Master's carriage. The citizens were always like that. Hence, Gu Shijiu did not care much about it. She took a glance ahead and finally saw a piece of red further ahead. They were almost there. "Hey, it is Celestial Master Zhua. That's his ship." Someone cheered from the outside. Gu Shijiu went stiff in the cabin, but she was back to normal almost immediately. She opened the curtain and looked out the window. Indeed, a blue ship was traveling beside her, and that was Di Fui's vehicle. His blue ship was usually high in the sky. Hence, Gu Shijiu took a few more glimpses because it was very rare for it to travel on the land. In fact, it was like a floating ship rather than moving on the ground because there was about a half-foot gap between the ship and the ground. Published at 23rd of February, 2019, 12:05 and 4 seconds a.m., Chapter 1631. 1631, the ship was moving at lightning speed, and it cut into Gu Zijia's lane in the blink of an eye. It blocked Gu Zijia's carriage from moving forward. After half a year, Gu Shijiu finally met Di Fui again. Di Fui was sitting inside the ship. He was wearing a purple robe with a mask on his face. His silver hair was beautiful under the snow. His aura was as strong as usual, and he was like a deity watching the world from a higher altitude. The citizens quickly bowed to greet him, and Long Moyen also got down from his horse to do the same. Gu Shijiu was at the same level as him now. Hence, she did not have to get down to greet him. Therefore, she quietly sat in the cabin and shifted her gaze away from his silver hair. This time, there was only Mu Feng and a young man in a black robe inside Di Fui's ship. Di Fui made a gesture to signal the people to rise. Upon doing so, he turned his attention to Gu Shijiu. "It's such a coincidence, Celestial Master Gu. I'm surprised to see you here." "Celestial Master Gu?" Gu Shijiu chuckled sarcastically. The manner in which he addressed her was getting stranger every time they met. "Oh yeah, it's such a coincidence." Gu Shijiu smiled with a beautiful grin. She then added, "Celestial Master Zhua, would you mind to move a little? You've blocked our way." "Our?" Di Fui glimpsed at her and Long Moyen. "Where are you heading to?" Gu Shijiu immediately answered, "I think it has nothing to do with Celestial Master Zhua." Di Fui was at a loss for words and casually replied, "Indeed, I am simply asking you." After that, he moved his ship slightly to let Gu Shijiu go. Gu Shijiu did not hesitate to move past his ship. Of course, Long Moyen followed from the back and continued their journey. Though they had made some distance, Di Fui could still hear the conversation between Long Moyen and Gu Shijiu. "Shijiu, we almost arrive at the plum garden. It's interesting to see the plum flower in the snow." "You're right. We should enjoy it later." The white jade carriage was no longer in sight, while Di Fui's blue ship remained stationary. Mu Feng glimpsed at his master with sympathy. Perhaps Miss Gu has gotten over their relationship, but his master was getting more and more unpredictable in this aspect. The young man in black could not stop shivering from the cold. He wanted to urge Celestial Master Zhua to enter the capital as soon as possible. However, he did not dare to do so. Di Fui remained stationary and silent in the ship, as though he was an ice sculpture. His strong aura has made the young man zip his mouth. Mu Feng took a glance at the young man as he shook his head. "Are you cold?" asked Mu Feng as he tapped on the young man's shoulder. The young man stuttered. "Of course," said the young man without denial. "I thought you're quite strong and capable since you possessed a level 6 spiritual power and claimed that you're a Heaven's Gift disciple. However, it appears that you can't even stand a little chill." The young man in black was speechless. Usually, he could indeed resist the cold, and he was perfectly fine even if he only wore a piece of thin clothes during the winter. However, he had no idea why he felt so cold since he boarded Celestial Masters' ship, and the chill even penetrated his bones. He tried his best to endure, and he could not wait to enter the capital so that he could warm himself when they arrived at the hotel. He felt sad because he was confident in his gifts. Unfortunately, he accidentally claimed that he was probably a Heaven's Gift disciple when he joked with his buddies on the 29th of December. Celestial Master has then paid him a visit on the night of Chinese New Year's Eve. His nightmare begun since that day, and it has never ended until today. Published at 23rd of February, 2019, 6:05 and 8 seconds a.m., Chapter 1632. 1632 Mu Feng notified Gu Shijio as the messenger of the Lord that she is to make the necessary preparations for auditioning the Lord's apprentice tomorrow. Di Fui sent a sudden message to Mu Feng. It came out of the blue. Mu Feng was taken by surprise. Hasn't this matter always been under the charge of the Lord? I don't think she would hand this mantra to her and order her to do as she is told. You four will need to guard her later. Do remind her about that. Di Fui then retrieved a piece of paper. Mu Feng took the paper and just stared at his master. "Master, are you trying to pass on everything that Celestial Masters does to her?" He always thought that his master did not want to take on the identity of Celestial Masters anymore, and thereby wanted to shift all of his responsibilities to Gu Shijio. Or might it because his master did not like seeing Gu Shijio and Long Moyen together and wanted to find a reason to separate them? "I'm just sick of it." Di Fui dismissed him with an explanation of a mere 5 words. "Be on your way." Understood. Mu Feng did not dare to ask any further and jumped down the boat to carry out his task. Only that black-shirted young man and Celestial Master were left on the boat. The black-shirted young man felt a sudden, immense pressure. "Get off!" Di Fui spurted. "What?" The black-shirted young man raised his eyes in perplexity. "Get off. Go to the courier station in town yourself. And don't even think about running away, or it'll make you regret the day you were born." Di Fui's voice was as chilly as the northern winds. "All right." The black-shirted young man jumped off the ship as though he was escaping. The ship went away like a gust of wind and soon disappeared. Of course, the black-shirted young man did not even think twice about running away. He still had too much to live for. He had already grown too familiar with the perversity of Celestial Master's methods in this half-month. The black-shirted young man had been an intractable person who did not fear or bow down to anyone. However, in front of Celestial Masters, he could only behave as docile as a baby chick. Although he was forced off the boat, he still felt a refreshing sense of relief. As he was already quite near to the city, it would not take too big of a toll on him to run there. He stretched his legs that were nearly frozen and felt that the sky had suddenly turned blue and the snow grew tender. He looked involuntarily at the direction where Gu Shijio had disappeared. His heart brimmed with surprise. So that lady was the famed National Celestial Master. Who would have thought that she would be so young and so beautiful? This young man was only 15 years old. When Gu Shijio made a name for herself, he was still a child. He had heard all about the stories of her great feats and revered her immensely. In his mind, Gu's Zygius existence was like a legend. Who would have thought that he would see her in person when he set foot in the Phasian Kingdom if it were not for Celestial Masters being beside him, just now, he would almost already have cheered in elation upon seeing Gushijio. He could still see her, right? If he could just speak to her, his life would be complete. The black-shirt young man lost himself in reverie. Di Fui and Mu Feng's conversations were carried out through a directed audio spell. As the young man could not hear them, he did not know that his examination tomorrow would be hosted by Gushijio. In the plum forest where the trees blossom in red like flames, Gushijio raised her eyebrows and looked at Mu Feng, the current messenger Shangshan, who alighted on the top of a plum tree, not knowing why he has come here all of a sudden. Mu Feng was in a dilemma. As the Lord had sent him to relay the Lord's order, he was to put on the apparel of the messenger Shangshan, a wide green robe with special golden cloud-shaped patterns on its edges and a ghoulish mask. Published at 23rd of February, 2019, 12:05 and 9 seconds p.m., Chapter 1633. 1633 Mu Feng's disguise would be able to fool others, but Gushijio knows his identity. Therefore, although Mu Feng looked menacing, he felt unbearably embarrassed inside. The Lord sent me to notify you that as the National Celestial Master, you are to host the selection for the disciples of the Lord tomorrow without any delay. As soon as he finished relaying the Lord's message, he snapped his fingers and a thin booklet flew to her hand. Please refer to this booklet if you have any inquiries. Due to the shortage of time, we hope that Celestial Master Gu would attend to this matter with urgency. What kind of game was Di Fui trying to play? Gushijio failed to comprehend this matter entirely and decided to ask, if I may ask the Shangshan messenger, doesn't the matter of auditioning the Lord's disciples fall under Celestial Master's responsibility? How could I exceed my authority? The arrangements for this matter have been done by the Lord, and it would suffice for Celestial Master Gu to comply to his orders. Under her piercing stare, Mu Feng could not maintain his austere facade anymore and left as soon as he finished speaking. Gushijio was frustrated beyond words and just looked at the booklet in her hand. The booklet was full of words in a regular script that demonstrated exquisite calligraphy. It was his writing. Di Fui is truly a man of wonder. He has mastered multiple forms and styles of calligraphy. When he switches from one form or style to another, it would be impossible to guess that they were written by just one person alone. As Gushijio had been engaged to Di Fui for 8 years, she had grown familiar with all styles of his writing and could identify his penmanship without mistake. He indeed wrote the words in this booklet. Di Fui always liked to write in cursive and semi-cursive, in which his words glided like dragons and seemed as though they would soar out of the dimensions of the paper. It was rare for him to write in a regular script like today. What is this person trying to do? It was his task. Why would he want to shift it onto her? Was he taking advantage of her? A fire burned in Gu's Zygius heart. As the selection for the Lord's disciple involved a lot of complex procedures, she would hardly have enough time, even if she started to make the preparations right now, and could not idly indulge in the scenery of the plum forest anymore. Just as that thought entered her mind, she suddenly had a realization that it was possible that Di Fui could not bear the sight of her enjoying life with Long Moyen. Was this the reason he assigned the task to her? Was he jealous? When this final thought emerged in her mind, her heart skipped a beat, and she quickly cast it away in denial. He had already treated her as nothing more than a stranger. How could he still be jealous? Perhaps he was just a possessive person, and even though they're not together anymore, he did not want other men to be with her due to his male chauvinism. Her rage swelled up inside her as she felt that the last explanation was the most reasonable one. What did Di Fui take her for? And why would she have to listen to him? Long Moyen was standing by her side. Upon seeing the sour expression on her face, he asked, Shijio, since you have something to attend to, why don't we go back first? Gushijio took a light breath, then put the booklet inside her sleeve and replied, It's nothing. She strode forward majestically and said, We're in the middle of a festival. Let's not talk about anything else and just enjoy the moment. The plum forest was blossoming in its full resplendence. As people walked past, the petals fluttered down to the snowy ground like rain, forming an elegant contrast between red and white. The plum flowers that bloomed in this forest seemed to be exceptionally red, with a luxuriousness like blood, a vibrancy like fire. Gu Shijio sauntered in the plum forest. As she took taking in the fragrance of the plums, her anger subsided a little. Long Moyen was quite understanding toward her and did not ask about the matter earlier. Instead, he struck a light conversation with her. He was quite a person of esprit and humor and possessed great knowledge in various fields. Hence, he was able to keep her quite intrigued. Published at 24th of February, 2019, 12 o'clock and 3 seconds a.m., Chapter 1634. 1634 The plum forest was unusually big. The winding paths of the forest led into a tranquil depth where the ground was sprinkled with the petals of the red plum flowers. When travelers walk past and trample on the leaves like dirt, one cannot help but feel a certain sense of cruelty. Gu Shijio held a petal in her hand and took a closer look. The petal was quivering on her palm, and thin streams of red dripped through the creases of her palm like blood. She was surprised by the phenomenon. In her impression, plum flowers should not be flowing with liquid this red. Just when she was about to take a closer look, a light breeze started to blow nearby, and Mu Feng appeared once again above a clump of plum flowers not far away from her. This time he was dressed as himself. When he alighted in front of Gu Shijio, she was shocked and took a step back. She exclaimed, "What are you doing?" Mu Feng coughed lightly and handed a jade tablet he took from his waist to her. "Miss Gu, my master has sent me to deliver this to you. He said it's for your ease of communication with him." She was not unfamiliar with this jade tablet. It was Di Fuya's special tool of communication. The four heavens gift disciples each had one, and they were all different. The jade tablets used by the four messengers were able to transmit sounds and images. However, those used by the four heavens gift disciples only retained the former function. The jade tablet that Mu Feng presented to her was the same as those possessed by the four disciples. Gu Shijio had no intention to receive the tablet. "Tell your master that I do not have any need to communicate with him, and thereby would not be needing this tablet." Mu Feng seemed to know that she would reply in this exact manner and did not withdraw his outstretched hand. "Lady Gu, my master has said that it's important for you to care about the bigger picture. Although you're not a Heaven's Gift disciple, your status is no longer different than theirs. What they have, you must have as well. Unless what?" Gu Shijio asked almost instantly. Mu Feng sighed. "My master said that he believes that Miss Gu is someone who does not mix private interests with public matters and would not be a trouble to me. In other words, Gu Shijio should accept the jade tablet unless she still could not forget about her relationship with him and allowed her private affairs to impede her responsibilities." Although he did not state it overtly, Gu Shijio was astute and could grasp his implication. Her fingers tightened in her sleeves. So he would take advantage of her just like that? Why? Mu Feng feared that she would not accept the item. He scratched his head and said, "Miss Gu, my master said that if you don't accept this tablet, he would skin me alive." Gu Shijio gave a tranquil smile. "Don't worry. Even if he skins me alive, he won't skin you. I won't receive this jade tablet. Take it back with you." Upon finishing her sentence, she began to leave. Mu Feng tried to catch up to her, and he walked beside her as he said, "Miss Gu, please accept this. Even if he doesn't skin me alive, he might cast me into the mysterious fire land for punishment. What a capable fellow this Di Fui is." Gu Zijia's footsteps halted a little. Mu Feng took this opportunity to kneel before her and held the jade tablet up high. "Miss Gu, please sympathize with me." The sight of Mu Feng, who had always been seen in elevation, kneeling in the snowy ground, not only shocked Gu Shijio, but the people around her as well. Before she knew it, Mu Feng had already put the jade tablet in her hand. He bowed to her and said, "Thank you for your kind sympathy." He then flew away. Just when Gu Shijio was deliberating whether to destroy the jade tablet, the directed audio spell on her waist began to flicker. She put the jade tablet in her sleeve and picked up the directed audio spell, from which she could hear Long Sai's voice. "Shijio, the wisdom fruit has ripened early, and I've already plucked it. When would you visit the Tianwen clan? This wisdom fruit is quite special and needs to be used within 3 days. You. Published at 24th of February, 2019, 6:05 and 3 seconds a.m., Chapter 1635. 1635 The wisdom fruit was the exact ingredient needed to change one's body. According to long size estimations, the wisdom fruit should take 1 month to ripen, but it somehow matured in half a month. Maybe the heavens want her to abandon her current body and return it promptly to cut all relations with Di Fui as soon as possible. Gu Shijio took a light breath. Give me some time. It'll go over now. Long Sai had no idea that she would be that agitated. After pausing momentarily, he said, "You can take some time to think about it. Perhaps come over after the Spring Lantern Festival?" "There's no need to think about anything," she interjected. "They'll come over right now. Since it is only a matter of time before she dies, Gu Shijio wants to free herself from this mess." She raised her head and looked to the sky. The setting sun had already sunk below the horizon with roseate clouds scattered across the skyline. She hung up the directed audio spell. After bidding farewell to Long Moyen, she did not go back to the Gu residence, but instead summoned the wind caller and went straight to Tianwen Mountain. Long Sai had said that the best time to change one's body is at midnight. If nothing goes awry, she will become a brand new self tomorrow. Gu Shijio did not use any warp spells to travel because she still had ample time and wanted to accustom herself to life with a level 8 spiritual power. The space warping spell requires a spiritual power of at least level 10. Once she changes her body, she will not be able to use it anymore. The wind caller glided along the air as Gu Shijio sat inside the carriage and beheld the scenery outside through the curtains. As she did not set a barrier to resist the wind, the currents grazed her face like a drizzle of blades. The muscle and Lu Wu did not know what she had in her mind. Lu Wu took on the form of a child and slept along the wall of the carriage while the muscle shrunk itself into the size of a plate and opened its shell near Gu Zijia's feet to converse with her. "Master, you've been running errands in the Tianwen clan quite a lot recently. Have you taken a liking to Long Sai?" The muscle was quite snoopy. Gu Shijio tapped on its shell. "Don't talk nonsense. He and I are only friends, and they will only be friends. Some things in fate, when missed, will be missed forever and have no chance of recurring again. It is no different with love as well. She knows her feelings toward Long Sai. She can treat him as a friend until death and risk her life for him, but she is unable to love him ever again. Long Sai deserves someone better, someone who can love him wholeheartedly and has not gone through a lot of vicissitudes like her. She might marry someone in the future, maybe because of love, maybe because of a sense of obligation, but neither reason would lead her to Long Sai. Muscle, if my spiritual power drops in the future, will you still treat me as your master?" Gu Shijio asked in a casual manner. The muscle became surprised. "Master, once one's spiritual power rises, it would not drop. A person's spiritual power can only be depleted, but with adequate training, it will be restored." I said if the muscle raised its shell. "Master, no matter what happens, you'll always be my master, even if your spiritual power drops to abysmal levels." Gu Shijio felt gratified. She knew that even though the muscle was a glutton, it would not betray her. She took a look at Lu Wu. Lu Wu was taking a nap, but it heard their conversation. It opened its eyes and said to her, "You'll always be my master. He'll never treat you otherwise." Gu Shijio had told it all about a modern drama before. It took a special liking to stories involving special agents and had memorized the lines therein. Gu Shijio felt a slight warmth in her heart and patted Lu Wu. Lu Wu returned to its original form and wagged its 9 tails as it took a step back. "Master, please don't touch me anymore." The bracelet that Celestial Masters had put on it had retained its perverse function. Published at 24th of February, 2019, 12:05 and 4 seconds p.m., Chapter 1636. 1636, anytime Lu Wu makes physical contact with its master, it would revert to its original form. Gu Shijio could not help but laugh. Seeing that Lu Wu retook the form of a child and went to sleep again, she decided not to disturb it. She looked down at the firmament stone on her wrist. Once she successfully changed her body, the thing she will feel most sorry for is little Chong, as it would not be able to communicate with her again. As the firmament stone probably felt too bored the last time Gu Shizhou had swapped bodies, it managed to find a spiritual cultivation method from some corner of the universe. Once it successfully masters this spiritual cultivation technique, it would be able to communicate smoothly with Gu Shizhou no matter how many times she changes her body. That spiritual cultivation method is immensely abstruse to grasp. Therefore, it had told Gu Shizhou a month ago that it would seclude itself for half a year to master this technique. The firmament stone is deep in slumber now. It would not awake even if thunder crashes down. Maybe once it wakes up and masters that technique, it would be able to communicate with her new body without any complications. She looked out the carriage, and the night had descended upon the earth. In the darkness, a light flurry of snow began to dance without the light from the moon or stars. Perhaps it would be a bright day tomorrow. It was already the 15th day of the first month of the lunar calendar. She hoped that she would be able to see the full moon that is as big as a saucer. The carriage had traveled for about 2 hours now. She looked toward the horizon and could already see the Tianwen Mountain and Long Sai's waving figure. Meanwhile, in Celestial Masters' mansion, Di Fui felt a bit restless and agitated tonight and could not even meditate. He seemed to have some sort of ill premonition. However, he was unable to crystallize his intuition even after performing an augury with his fingers. He walked around the observatory and took a look at the star chart but did not notice any abnormalities. Even though the night has grown old, he still did not have any trace of somnolence. He did not want to sleep. He still had plenty of time to rest in the future. Putting on a shirt and walking out to the blizzardy storm, he was greeted by a violent gale of wind and snow in the face. He walked one round inside his mansion to try to calm down. As he still felt perturbed, he went back into his resting place. He took out a jade tablet and cast a spell on it. After a while, the jade tablet began to project a crystal clear image that displayed the white jade chariot. The white jade chariot was empty and barren. There was no one inside. Di Fui knitted his brows slightly and turned his head to the corner of his house to take a look at the hourglass. It was already late in the night, and Gu Shizhou would normally already be resting inside the white jade chariot. What happened today? Could it be that she was studying the booklet used for the selection of Heaven's Gift disciples for tomorrow and had forgotten all about the time? That cannot be it. In the past few months, Gu Shizhou would stay in this chariot even if she wanted to read because of the absolute quiescence it provides that prevents any disruption. In this time of night, where had she gone? Di Fui depleted quite a lot of his spiritual power every time he conjures this spell. So for the past few days, he did not check on her quality of sleep daily, but once every 2 or 3 days instead. If there are any perturbations in her sleep, he would cast a spell and grant her good rest after going to her in spirit through the light reflecting from the mirror. It depletes even more spiritual power for him to send his spirit to her through the mirror, so he does not cast it lightly. After failing to notice any other anomalies, he paused for a while, then took out another jade tablet. This jade tablet could establish communication and connect to the jade tablet that he just gave Gu Shizhou. Making up his mind, he activated the jade tablet. The tablet flickered, but no one picked up on the other end. Di Fui tapped on the jade tablet a few more times, but still there was no answer. Di Fui furrowed his brows and summoned Mu Feng to him. Though Mu Feng was just about to rest, he had no grievances being summoned to Di Fui. He bowed down and asked, "Does Master have any orders for me?" Published at 25th of February, 2019, 12:05 and 5 seconds a.m., Chapter 1637. 1637. Have you gave the jade tablet to Gu Shizhou? Mu Feng had not expected that his master would summon him so frantically just to ask this question. He nodded and answered, "Yes, I have." "Did she keep it?" "About this." Mu Feng paused. He just pushed the jade tablet to her, then left, and did not see whether she kept it. She should have kept it, right? The jade tablets from Celestial Masters are invaluable. Those who had the fortune of getting one in their hands would enshrine it and treat it like the ashes of their ancestors. However, it might not be the case with Gu Shijio, especially when she had firmly refused to accept it. Mu Feng suddenly became uncertain. Could Gu Shijio have thrown that jade tablet away? Di Fui could read what Mu Feng was thinking from his expression. He took a light breath and asked again, "When you gave her the jade tablet, who was with her?" Long Moyen. Knowing Gu Zijia's behavior, it was unlikely that she would toss the jade tablet away in front of someone else, but after their breakup, it would be hard to know this for sure. Di Fui ordered him, "Go to Long Moyen's mansion and ask him about her situation." Mu Feng stated his pledge, then went on to his errand. Di Fui sat in silence for a while. He then cast a spell and went straight to the National Celestial Master's mansion to check on what she was doing. He walked around the mansion, but could not find any trace of her. He heard from a maidservant that she had not returned tonight. Then where would she be? Mu Feng finally obtained some news from his side. "Master," Long Moyen said that Miss Gu had kept the jade tablet with her, but after receiving a message from the head of the Tianwen clan, she just chatted for a while more and left promptly as though she had something urgent to attend to. Di Fui knitted his brows. What urgent matter might Long Sai have for her? Does Long Moyen know about what urgent matter Long Sai had in mind? Long Moyen said that he took a few steps back when she received the message through the directed audio spell and only heard something about some wisdom fruit having ripened early. Wisdom fruit? Di Fui's expression changed. He was an excellent medical practitioner and naturally knew the uses of the wisdom fruit. It could be used to collect souls and adjust the synchronization rate between the soul and the body. What does Long Sai and Gu Shijio want to do with the wisdom fruit? Could it be? A wave of coldness surged through Di Fui's limbs at that moment. He took out his special jade tablet and attempted to contact Long Sai, but to no avail. This type of jade tablet was carried by Heaven's Gift disciples everywhere they go for the convenience of communication. It is only when Long Sai is conducting some great research meticulously that demands all of his focus that he will put the jade tablet aside. At this time of night, what great research could Long Sai be conducting? Di Fui took a deep breath and looked at the sky. There is only 1 hour left until midnight. He is currently a full 3,000 miles. Even if he put on wings and flew there now, he would not make it there in an hour. He stood on a roof with his limbs almost frozen. With a slip of the foot, he almost fell off. This noise alerted the huge dog of this home, who rushed out of its kennel and barked frenziedly at him. Who is it? The host of this house was quite vigilant and charged out with a wooden club in his hand. After failing to find any thief, he swore loudly and went back to his house. At this moment, Di Fui did not have enough time to return to his mansion and landed in a deserted yard. Sitting down and taking out a floral patterned jade tablet, he cast another spell. After it showed the rippling image of the interior of the white jade chariot, he conjured a spell and sent his soul into the tablet. Published at 25th of February, 2019, 6:05 and 4 seconds a.m., Chapter 1638. 1638, the procedure for swapping bodies was very complicated. It would take about 1.5 hours to perform all the actions. Before Long Sai performed the procedure, he advised her to consider once more. However, all his persuasions were in vain, as Gu Shijio was very determined. Long Sai had to do it. Before everything started, Gu Shijio thought about getting in touch with Di Fui via the jade tablet. She wanted to bid farewell to him and to let him know that he should look for others to verify the identity of a true Heaven's Gift disciple tomorrow. Once she switched to a new body, her spiritual power would be reduced to level 8. She would no longer be able to activate the spiritual pillar. After staring blankly at the jade tablet for some time, she finally decided that she should turn it on and say her last words. Suddenly, a movie scene that she watched before reminded her of how painful it was for the female lead to bid farewell to her love in the movie. She smiled wryly. The lovers from a movie were madly in love. The scene where the female lead had to bid her last goodbye was very heartbreaking. What was the big deal about her story then? The relationship between her and Di Fui was completely shattered. They probably treated each other worse than strangers. He could most probably be considered as her superior leader. Having thought of that, she started to wonder if she should make the farewell call. Her blind imitation of the last farewell seemed absurd all of a sudden. Hence, she finally decided not to make the call. She should wait until the completion of the switch and send the body back to him. She also thought about giving up her status as the National Celestial Master. She did not want to continue being his subordinate, as she wanted nothing to do with him at all. She would leave the Facian Kingdom for good and move somewhere else. She would finally be able to travel unfettered. She was mentally prepared for the outcome, so she was prepared from the very beginning to deal with the problems that might arise. Everything in the aftermath was well arranged. She kept the Jade tablet, the gift from Di Fui, in her storage bag. Everything else that was given by him was kept away altogether. She left nothing behind. Once the switch was done, she would put the body in the storage bag and send it back to him along with everything else. Gu Shijio followed Long Sai's every instruction carefully. She did not hesitate at all throughout the entire procedure. She was the kind of woman who was very determined in everything that she had decided to do. There was no space for regret. As the procedure had to be carried out in complete silence without any disturbance, it had to be done in Long Sai's laboratory. The exterior was designed with strictly restrictive injunctions. The laboratory was also sealed with many security doors. Even Long Sai's disciples could not enter. For security purposes, Long Sai assigned 6 more disciples to patrol the surroundings of the laboratory to make sure no one could break in. Finally, Gu Shijio lay down on the cold jade bed that was made especially for the procedure. The ice coffin was placed next to her bed. The clone body in the ice coffin had been defrosted. The body lay in the coffin, looking very much alive. The cold jade bed was piercing cold. The stream of cold air started to penetrate through the acupuncture points on her back. The cold was unbearable, as though her blood vessels had turned into ice as a result of the extreme cold. She closed her eyes and held onto the wisdom fruit as she patiently waited for the separation of her soul from her current body. It was really cold. However, the cold was necessary. In order to preserve the condition of her body, she had to go through the immediate freezing procedure. If the same situation were to happen to a normal human, he or she would have become a living ice statue by now. But Gu Shijio was, after all, a celestial being whose spiritual level was already at level 10. Her body, thus, had an involuntary defense ability. When threatened, the defense mechanism would be immediately activated, protecting her body from the penetration of the cold from the cold jade bed. It was almost midnight. It was the coldest hour of a day, which made it the perfect time to carry out the procedure for the switch to a new body. Chapter 1639. When Gu Shijio was on the bed, she tried hard to suppress the automatic response of the spiritual power of her body to resist the penetrating cold. The procedure was quite unbearable. Gu Zijia's hands started to tremble, but she kept her composure and remained calm. Since she was trading her body for her long-term peace and freedom, she would do it. She would take the pain for the sake of a better future. If possible, she would even choose to have her past and memory completely wiped out to forget about the love and the betrayal. She wanted to start anew. She asked Long Sai if it was possible for her to have the heartbreak potion so her past emotions could be forgotten. Long Sai answered yes, but he added that it was not suitable for her use. Her soul was marked with a unique marking. Even the legendary monk Pasup would not be able to make her forget about her past. However, Long Sai also told her that after the successful switch to her new body, she would not have the memory of being another person other than herself. She would only be Gu Shijio. Long Sai was positioned beside her as he started performing the rituals. She could feel the increasing strength of the cold on the bed. Gradually, the cold started to break through her last defense from her spiritual power and penetrated her blood vessels. She was about to lose consciousness. Bam! A very loud noise came roaring, as though the ground had cracked. The entire room shook a little. The room shook in great intensity, like a massive earthquake The apparatus in the sealed chamber started to shake and fall off the table. The ice jade bed that Gu Shijio was lying on started to shake intensely, thus waking her up from her sleep. She opened her eyes. What was happening? Was that an earthquake? She turned to Long Sai for answers, only to notice that he was confused as well. The confusion lasted only for a few seconds as the entrance was shattered. They could hear the noise and the bustle that was happening outside. One of them shouted, "My lord, the arrival of the Lord." The voice belonged to one of Long Sai's disciples. Soon, a white shadow flashed before their eyes and entered the room. The spell that Long Sai was casting fell from his hand. He turned his head and looked up. What was the Lord doing here? Before he could fully comprehend the situation, the white shadow came to them like a powerful storm that was impossible to be stopped, giving them no time to react. An enormous strike came from the white shadow. It aimed directly at the ice coffin. A loud, impactful outburst could then be heard. The white shadow started to gleam with a sudden brief burst of white light. The light surrounded Gu Shijio, who was still helplessly lying on the bed, thus pulling her up and away. Gu Shijio floated away from the bed buoyantly into the hands of the white shadow. It all happened too quickly, almost in the blink of an eye. Long Sai had no chance to react. When he finally made sense of what happened, the room was already scattered about in a mess, as though a massive hurricane had just destroyed it. The ice coffin was now in pieces. The clone body in the coffin no longer existed. As for Gu Shijio, some parts of her circulation were frozen by the piercing cold of the ice jade bed. Obtuse, her reactions were slower than usual. The blocked vessels had resisted her ability to react. When she could finally get a grasp of what happened, she was already in the arms of another man, whose hand pressed firmly against her back. A continuous flow of warm airstream continued to penetrate her skin. The warmth started to move steadily in a current to all her limbs and resolve the noxious cold that had dominated her system. The warmth regenerated the activity of her vessels and thus revived her blood circulation. The man was in a complete white. His robe was white. Even his hat was white as well. His snow-white mask made him look like an ice statue. When Gu Shijio was in his arms, she felt warm, like she had just fallen into a heater. Chapter 1640, It was the Lord. He chose to use his identity as the Lord this time. The air had a herbal, flowery scent. It was a familiar and yet strange scent to Gu Shijio. She knew it was his scent. Somehow, there were other elements in his scent that she could not quite recognize. She found it a little heart-wrenching when the smell reminded her of him. "Let me go," she immediately called out. As their spiritual powers used to be of great disparity, she could not quickly get away every time he held on to her. However, this time was different. She asked him to let her go, and he did it right away. She fell off from his arms. Fortunately, her usual dexterity was able to save her from an embarrassing fall. She took a quick turn and landed on her feet. Her heart was thumping fast. Di Fuya's sudden appearance in such a fiery temper was entirely out of her expectation. She looked at him fixedly and uttered, "You." Before she could finish, the fruit in her hand flew away all of a sudden. It melted and disappeared before her eyes. Long Sai was awestruck, and Gu Shijio did not know what to say. His courtesy suddenly came to his mind. He took one step forward and got his knees on the ground. "My lord." A strong current approached and blew him away before he could finish his greeting. Bam! A loud noise followed. He hit the pillar right away. The unstable laboratory was already in a precarious condition before he smashed against the pillar. The final impact caused the entire laboratory to collapse, followed by the tumble of the last supporting pillar. Gu Shijio was utterly shocked. Without hesitation, she quickly launched towards Long Sai to pull him away before the entire building collapsed. Before she could reach him, she was dragged away helplessly and escaped from the collapsing building. She landed safely outside. The laboratory was rather vast, almost the size of half a soccer field. Hence, the impact of the collapse was tremendous. It felt as though the entire Tianwen Mountain was affected by the remarkable crash as well. The incident had also alarmed all the other disciples of the Tianwen clan. They quickly rushed towards the direction of the incident. When they finally saw the man in white, all of them were immediately stunned and stood frozen. It was the Lord. Many of them were able to recognize their deity and panicked. They quickly kneeled and bowed before him. They would never have expected that the Lord would be at Tianwen Mountain. Most people here had only ever seen the Lord's portrait. Some of them saw him from afar during the fight against the fake celestial Master Zhua. They could finally see him today. The Lord was standing a distance away from them, but his presence alone was able to cast tremendous pressure on the people around him. The sense of pressure was quite overbearing. All the men started to panic and go weak at their knees. No one would possibly doubt his identity, because no one on earth could possess the same degree of aura. His convincing display of invincible might was undoubtedly remarkable. Even heaven and earth would startle in his presence. Gu Shijio could feel his tremendous and boundless pressure. Her heart started to wrench as the pressure started to become unbearable. Her legs started to feel weak too. She could no longer stand properly. Ever since they met, this was the first time for her to face his omnipotence as a god. She tried very hard to stand upright to talk to him, but the pressure was too strong for her to overcome. She could barely utter another word. Long Sai was a man with an extraordinary spiritual power. He possessed a natural protective barrier to shelter him from any possible dangers. The collapse of the building was horrendous, but not fatal. Soon, he rose sharply from the smoldering ruins and landed safely outside. Chapter 1641. Long Sai's face was pale. Anxious and doubtful, he fixed his eyes on the Lord, who was now suspended in midair, overlooking the people. He could not figure out what he did wrong that could cause such a great rage from the Lord. Under the Lord's powerful influence, Long Sai could no longer hold himself together. He kneeled immediately and uttered, "My Lord." The Lord looked at him and responded, "Long Sai, do you know the crime that you have committed? Please tell me what I have done wrong." Long Sai answered, "I have said it before. Cloning is a practice that violates all rules and ethics of the world. It should no longer exist. I warned you about it 8 years ago and forbade you to carry out any activity related to cloning. Have you taken my words lightly?" Long Sai did not know what to say. Cold sweats broke out all over his body. 8 years ago, the Lord had indeed given him the warning to prohibit him from performing any sort of cloning activity to keep the ethics and principles of the feudal society. As time went by, he slowly forgot about it. How could he forget? Was it because Long Fan once occupied his body? Was it because he was too kind to reject Gu Zijia's plea and chose to ignore the warning? He bowed and admitted, "It is my fault. My lord, I am willing to accept the punishments." The Lord's orders were unbreakable laws. No one was allowed to break his orders. Long Sai had always been well aware of that rule. The Lord's eyes were icy. "If that is so, you may take the punishment and leave to the distant Fireland for 3 days to make you understand the severity of the incident," the Lord answered hostilely. The distant Fireland was a secret place. There were raging flames within that could turn a normal human into ashes almost instantaneously. It would still be great suffering even for someone whose kung fu was as powerful as Long Sai's. The fires would burn off a layer of skin for anyone who entered. Gu Shijio knew exactly how painful it would be in the distant Fireland. She could no longer hold back her frustration and took a big leap forward. "I'm the one who requested him to clone a new body for me. I beg him to do so. If someone has to take responsibility, I am the one who deserves to be punished. Please let him go." Di Fuya's emergence with a fiery temper was completely out of her expectation. As Gu Shijio had been on the frozen jade bed for a while, her logical thinking could barely work out the situation. The series of events had caused her a great confusion that she had no explanation to. When she could finally get a hold of what happened, she realized she was not comfortable with the situation. Firstly, she thought that he was doing that because of the reluctance and the distress to let her go. She thought that he did not wish for her to lose her spiritual power, which led him to destroy the clone body. She thought that he was concerned for her when he decided to get her off the ice jade bed. To her dismay, it was all about Long Sai going against his order. Long Sai was only making the clone body for her, so she could not step aside and watch Long Sai suffer the punishment alone. Determined, she elaborated further, if someone has to go to the distant Fireland, let me go on his behalf. He is only doing this for me. He is innocent. Her voice was a little shaky and hoarse as a result of the penetration of the cold. She stood her ground firmly and looked at the Lord fixedly. Under the mask, the Lord's eyes were even darker and profound. He responded in an icy tone, as though falling snow met the gusts of winter winds. Gu Shijio, did you think that I would not punish you? Gu Shijio continued to look at him. At this very moment, she finally understood the vast difference that separated them. He stood on a more superior ground, like an almighty god. She was insignificant, like a speck of dust under his superior presence. Chapter 1642. There was a time when Gu Shijio stood by Di Fui, thinking that they could be on equal ground someday. She tried her very best to be his match, but now she realized it was all her illusion. He only treated her differently because she had parts of Lan Jing's soul. Once the identity no longer existed, she would be nothing more than a myriad of ordinary beings. Her memory unavoidably reverted to former times with a sort of oppressive sadness, but she managed with a smile. I have never thought so. He regarded her as a total stranger, so why would he give her another way out? Even under the pressure of his tremendous presence, she tried all she could to stand up straight and look Di Fui in the eye. I said it once, and I will say it again. If you want to punish him, you have to punish me first. I am willing to take all the punishment on his behalf. Shijio, you cannot do that. Long Sai's expression completely changed. He had got a taste of how the suffering in the distant Fireland felt. It was too much for anyone to take. Even for a man like him, he had to suffer the burning flames in great agony. How would a delicate, ladylike Gu Shijio handle pain? He would rather take it all on himself. Long Sai took a step forward. My lord, the order was for me, and I went against it. Shijio did not even know about the existence of such an order. All she wanted was a new body so she could return the original body to Celestial Master Zhou. I heard that Celestial Master Zhou wanted to use the body for a different reason, so she did not want to be indebted to him. She had no other way than to ask for my help. She bears no evil intention. No blame should be attached to the unconscious doer of wrong. My lord, I hope you can forgive her. The Lord turned to look at Long Sai and asked, Are you trying to bargain with me? Long Sai dared not say anything. How dare you? Anxious, Long Sai's forehead broke out in sweat. All these years, the Lord had always been a man of his word, leaving no room for others to argue with him. His orders were even stricter than the military's orders. His followers would have to follow his orders without question. His issuance of punishments would be an unbreakable law. Who would even dare to bargain with him? Those who dare to bargain would end up with an even worse form of punishment. His superior position offered no room for a straightforward approach. All his followers would have to follow his orders. Dead silence filled the air, and no one dared to make sound. The Lord continued in an icy tone. Long Sai, you are a heaven's gift disciple, and yet you always act according to your sentiments. Your emotions blind you. You chose to disregard the overall situation and general interest. If you're not qualified to be a heaven's gift disciple, you'd better not be one. Soon, he launched a strike with a seven-colored ray that surrounded Long Sai. No, Gu Shijio was utterly shocked. Swiftly, she launched herself forward and launched a strike of her own to stop the incoming attack of the seven-colored ray. In the heat of the moment, she was too anxious to realize the strength of her strike. There was the sound of wind and thunder as she launched the attack. Surprisingly, she managed to return a strike in a multicolored ray, too. Her defense hit the incoming strike from Di Fui and gave it a great thump. However, her strength was, after all, incomparable to that of Di Fui's. Her attack was strong, but it was not enough to change the course of Di Fui's attack. Long Sai screamed out loud in pain when the ray finally hit him. You could try and attack again. The Lord's voice was frosty. I will then make sure that he dies a painful death." Gu Shijio was utterly shocked. She was completely pale and took a few steps back. For the first time, she finally understood how insignificant she was. There was nothing she could do. It was her fault that Long Sai was involved, but there was nothing she could do at this point. Chapter 1643, Gu Shijio simply stared at the Lord with eyes full of indignation. Briefly after, the seven-colored halo that surrounded Long Sai faded. Long Sai's face was pale as he kneeled helplessly on the ground. Unsure of where his wounds were, he kneeled with sweats rolling down his face. Gu Shijio was beside Long Sai, anxiously trying to read his pulse with trembling fingers. Long Sai was in great pain. His robes were all soaked in sweat, but he did not want Gu Shijio to be worried. He raised his hand and stopped her from reading his pulse. "It is all right. I am fine. Let me check." Gu Shijio answered in a hoarse voice, as though she was trying very hard to repress her struggles. "Please, I beg you. Let me have a look." She tried very hard to stop her body from trembling. Her face was as pale as paper. Nevertheless, she chose to focus on Long Sai with her unmoving, dark eyes. "Let me have a look at you." Long Sai finally stopped resisting. Gu Shijio tried to read his pulse with the tips of her icy, cold fingers. She looked very serious, like a real doctor. The circulation in Long Sai's body was a mess as his blood pressure kept surging. He could feel pain in every inch of his body, so much so that he wanted to turn and toss on the floor to ease the pain. However, he did not want Gu Shijio to be worried, so he held back his pain and gave her a comforting smile. "Nothing. It is nothing. There is only a little pain. Later. He'll be fine later." Gu Shijio fixed her eyes on him without saying anything. Through the tip of her fingers, a steady stream of spiritual power slowly entered his system. The spiritual power served to comfort his messed-up circulation. His condition was not too bad, as it did not take too long for his pulse to return to its normal rate. The pain in his body had been greatly reduced as well. Finally, Long Sai stopped sweating, and his complexion returned to normal. Gu Shijio removed her hand. How do you feel now?" Long Sai looked into his body condition and realized that his spiritual power seemed to have been reduced. He was about to reach level 10 before this. Now he was not even at level 9. He was actually relieved. He thought that he would lose all of his spiritual power. "Fine, I am fine," he quickly explained. It was a shame that he had lost one level, but the condition was not as bad as he thought. He could always practice more and regain his current status. Gu Zijia's eyes were filled with concern. She observed his complexion again and murmured, "Your spiritual power has been reduced. Just a little. It does not matter." Gu Shijio closed her eyes for a brief moment before she continued. "How can you say it does not matter? It is very difficult for you to advance from level 8 to level 9. She hesitated. Her lips were starting to tremble, but she tried to smile. "I got you into trouble. It is my entire fault. I should have behaved better. I will not do it, Aga." Before she could finish, she started to vomit blood. Her body then started to sway. Immediately, she suffered from a blackout and fell. "Shijio." In a blur, she could still remember that Long Sai called her name out loud. She could feel that she fell into a man's arms. Then, she lost consciousness completely. Gu Shijio was sick for 3 days. The fever came and went. She was unconscious. In her sleep, she could tell that someone kept holding onto her hand. Someone kept talking to her and telling her that she should stay strong. How could she stay strong? She was exhausted. She had always been a very strong and determined woman who would not rest until she had reached her goals. No matter how difficult the situation was, she would always do everything she could to overcome the problem. She had always been very optimistic. Chapter 1644. Gu Shijio had always been very optimistic in life. She believed that there was no obstacle that she could not overcome. When she was poor, she would convince herself that money was just another possession that she could always earn. If she did it right, money would eventually become her possession again. When other assassins were hunting her, she would do everything she could to escape from the threats. If she survived, she would get her revenge and make them understand why they should not mess with her. Even after Long Zai's betrayal, she could readjust her mentality very quickly to survive in a whole new era. She fought despicable men and even dealt with objectionable women. Her life had never been more interesting. She had indeed had a great time. However, she was tired of it all now. She had always thought that everything she did was right and meaningful. She could easily deal with her debt of gratitude or revenge. At this very moment, however, nothing seemed right anymore. The relationship severely costed her love, her health, and her emotions. It had even caused the doom for her friends. She was wrong, absolutely wrong. She was not as strong as she thought, and yet she kept trying to be free. Her hope was all in vain. While she was still in her state of unconsciousness, nightmares constantly haunted her. She was always sweating in anxiety and kept saying nonsense from time to time. The most frequent phrases were, "I am sorry, and I will not do it again." Even when she was unconscious, she knew that someone was always holding her hand tightly. She could hear someone apologizing to her, saying that it was not her fault. She was not always conscious. Sometimes, she could not quite differentiate the voices, as they kept fading away, but she knew that they were not from the same man. However, she did not listen clearly to what the voices were saying to her. Someone made her eat medicine. She also knew there was someone who whispered songs in her ear. The sound of the flute echoed. The melody was very comforting, like she was being cradled in the arms of her mother. Time passed, and Gu Shijio had been trapped in the stupor state for a while now. Finally, she was able to regain consciousness. She slowly opened her eyes. The first thing that caught her eyes was the delicate wooden framed window. There was a single twig of plum flower along with shadows all over the paper window from a distance. The window was half open. The light of the setting sun shone through, giving the room a warm sense of evening glow. The silver pot in the corner of the room was still boiling with some medicine. The herbal scent filled the entire room. The back of a man was facing her. He was busy stirring the medicine in the pot. The man was wearing a light green robe, seemingly tall and slender. His figure was unquestionably attractive. Her movement on the bed had caught his attention. The man turned around and lit up immediately with great delight. "Shijio, you are finally awake." "Teacher Long, I am sorry." The man was Long Sai. Before Gu Shijio could finish her apology, he signaled her to stop apologizing any further and gave her a comforting smile. "Don't say sorry anymore, all right? I have listened to it far too many times over the past few days." Soon, the medicine was ready. Long Sai poured the herbal soup from the pot and filled the bowl to its fullest. He took medicine to Gu Shijio and instructed, "Come, drink it." The boiling hot herbal soup had already been adjusted to a tolerable temperature when he passed it to her. It was neither too cold nor too hot. It was perfectly drinkable. He held the medicine in one hand and 2 sweets in the other. "The taste of the herbal soup is a little bitter. Take the sweets after you drink it." Gu Shijio did not argue any further and consumed the herbal soup. She drank it all. The herbal soup was indeed bitter, almost as unbearable as Coptis Chinensis one. She did not seem to notice the bitterness, though. She did not even frown a little. After taking the medicine, she did not even ask for the sweets. Long Sai noticed the changes. He knew that she had always been afraid of the taste of bitterness. When she was sick or hurt, she would always choose to take pills or modern medicines, as she was strongly against the idea of Chinese medicines. She would not agree, even if it was the best for her. Whenever she had no other choice, she would need a few sweets to keep the bitterness away. Chapter 1645. Because of her incapability to deal with the taste of bitterness, she would always tease her by saying that an assassin should not possess such trait. Gu Shijio remembered answering, "An assassin is still a human with flesh and bones. It is normal to have one minor imperfection." Now, she could finally overcome her so-called imperfection. The sweets would actually interfere with the effectiveness of the medicine, so Long Sai chose to make no further comment and filled another glass of water for her instead. Gu Shijio noticed that she was still in the territory of Tianwan clan. The place that she was currently staying must be one of the guest rooms. After drinking the glass of water, she immediately put her fingers on Long Sai's wrist. Long Sai knew that she was worried about his condition, so he did not hide his wrist away and let her read his pulse. "Don't worry, I'm doing fine," he explained. "Didn't he send you to the distant fireland?" Gu Shijio asked immediately. The question had been haunting her for days, even when she was unconscious. Long Sai's spiritual power had been significantly reduced. She was concerned that he would no longer be able to tolerate the extreme heat. In one of her many nightmares, she saw that Long Sai was burned alive and became entirely charred. Long Sai shook his head. No, he did not. He seemed to be occupied by another matter and left urgently. The Lord left in a hurry. Before he went, he did say that he would postpone the punishment regarding the distant fireland and that they would talk about it soon. Swiftly, he then disappeared into thin air. Gu Shijio was relieved. Seemingly, it was Long Sai who had been taking care of her for the past few days. She got him into trouble, and yet he still lavished every care on her. Gu Shijio looked down in guilt. She did not know what to feel about it. There was a mixed feeling of gratitude and guilt. She regretted her impulsive mistake. She should not have assumed that she was strong enough to be evenly matched with the man. It was a very dumb move. She promised not to repeat the same mistake. However, she did not quite understand why Di Fui would become so infuriated. If he really wanted to find another body to revive his past love, she would be very happy to return the body to him. In that case, he would never have to look for another perfect replacement for Lan Jinka if the switch succeeded. Both of them could achieve two things in one go. What was he angry about, then? If this were before, Gu Shijio would easily overthink that the reason for his fury was because Di Fui hated to see her spiritual power being wasted. She would assume that his love for her still existed and that he still cared for her. However, the recent series of events made it clearer for her to see that she should not, and would never again, think that he still cared for her. The man was a man with a plan for everything he did. He was probably angry because her decision might have a critical impact on his overall strategy and mess up the entire plot. Di Fui. His name used to make her feel genuinely warm. Now his name was nothing but a bitter disappointment. The room returned to its usual silence. Quietly, Long Sai read her pulse to monitor her condition. Her pulse was still weak, but stable. 3 days ago, she vomited blood because she was too agitated by her fury that was burning within. Also, it was one of the consequences of the unfinished procedure. Luckily, 3 days of careful treatment gradually nursed her back to health. Her physical health was restored. But what about her emotions? Her emotions were hurt more badly than her physical being. Other than her inconceivable murmur, she exhibited her suicidal thoughts while she was still unconscious. She seemed to have lost all hope. Perhaps that was one of the reasons for his unconsciousness. Long Sai was very worried that she might not wake up. Long Sai was worried that she might not want to live any longer. Immediately, he served her a bowl of hot fish soup to make sure she had something to eat. Shijio, come. Eat something. Gu Shijio agreed instantly. All right. Chapter 1646. Gu Shijio took the soup from him and immediately started eating. It was good that was willing to eat, and soon she finished the entire bowl of soup. Long Sai was relieved that she was not trying to commit suicide by refusing food. Quietly, he observed her. He could tell that there was something different about her now. Very soon, Long Sai discovered more and more of her changes. When she initially came to meet him, he knew that she was keeping her countenance with a forced smile. She could not get over her past relationship and was lost in her thoughts. However, the incident with Di Fui served as a second chance for her to have a physical transcendence and rebirth from her previous experience. She started to have a normal daily routine and practice. She would talk to him about all sorts of mental cultivation methods. She started to perform various alchemies and even managed to extract some level 8 pills. In order for her to perform the alchemy, she had to be completely focused without the slightest distraction from her personal life. Once she was distracted, the process would definitely turn out to be a complete failure with either useless or bad quality pills. If she managed to extract high quality pills of level 8, It would mean that there was nothing that could distract her from the devotion of her duties anymore. She could finally get over her past relationship. She seemed to be more energetic, and the way she talked became gradually optimistic. Enthusiastically, she started to indulge herself in the things that she loved to do and performed well. She seemed to have abandoned the burden that she had been dragging for so long. Her great display of vigor was proof of her revitalization. Her new change came as a great relief to Long Sai. He was very relieved. She was once again the Gu Shijio that he once knew. However, no one knew the price that she had to pay for her transformation. Gu Shijio spent 2 more days in Tianwen clan before returning to her residence. Gu Shijio had always been missing, so Gu Xietian was not really concerned about her recent disappearance. He came to visit her and was relieved to see that she was doing well. On the first day of her return from the Tianwen clan, Gu Xietian could already tell that there was something different about his daughter. There were many affairs that she needed to attend to as National Celestial Master. Moreover, she had many friends that would continuously stay in touch with her. On the first day of her return, she immediately started to deal with all kinds of matters. She managed her work efficiently. Her gathering with her friends was terrific, too. She would no longer stare blankly at the wall and get distracted in her thoughts. On the second night, while she was meditating in her room, she noticed that there was something wrong in her room. Immediately, she opened her eyes. There was a stranger in her room. There was a man of white robe and white hair. He was even wearing a white mask to cover up his face, leaving only his bright eyes. It was Di Fui. That was incorrect. It was the Lord, also known as Huang Tu. The attire was a clear display of his current identity as the Lord. Their eyes met for a while. Then, Gu Shijio rose from her bed and greeted him formally with a bow. "Welcome, my lord. What is the matter?" The courtesy in her response was polite and considerate. She knew her manners, leaving Huang Tu no chance to be picky about her flaws. Huang Tu observed her for a moment, as though trying to find some clues from her expression. However, Gu Shijio was calm, even under his intense glare. She did not show any waves of emotion. "Gu Shijio, you are now the National Celestial Master of the Kingdom, so you should take up your responsibility. There will be a test for the identity of Heaven's Gift disciples tomorrow. You will be the one to host the event." Gu Shijio looked him in the eye and said, "My lord, are you treating me like one of the Heaven's Gift's disciple now?" In fact, all Heaven's Gift disciples were his followers as well, like Long Sai, Hua Wuyin, and the rest. They always acted according to his orders. "No, your position is higher than the Heaven's Gift disciples," Huang Tu answered. "Are you handing me the task of Celestial Master Zhua? Aren't you worried that I may seize your authority?" "I'm not worried, as long as you're capable." Huang Tu was not concerned. Gu Shijio could feel the chill in his tone, but her smile remained. "Can I say no?" Huang Tu looked at her fixedly and answered, "You can say no, but you have to know that you are a little different." Chapter 1647, a bit different? Huh, does he think she cares? The creases near Gu Zijius' lips were drawn into deeper lines. "Thank you. I will gladly do your bidding, but so long as you fulfill my conditions." "You are the first one who dares to speak of conditions with me. Aren't you afraid of my wrath?" "No. You have told me before that I'm a bit different here, haven't you? Real clever. You finally know how to take things to your advantage. What conditions do you demand? Speak up. Revoke Long Sai's punishment to the distant Fire Land, and I will perform your task wonderfully." Gu Shijio stated her condition. Huang Tu's eyes lit up. "And what if I disagree?" Gu Shijio did not falter. "I will still perform the task entrusted to me. But as this type of challenge is a first to me, I can't assure that I won't make any mistakes and can only do it within my abilities." "Are you threatening me right now?" "No, I'm just speaking the truth. If you agree to my condition, I will perform the task as though my life depended on it. Within my abilities, and as though my life depended on it." These two phrases could produce a massive difference in the final result. Huang Tu looked at her for a moment. "I can grant him a 1-day deduction from his punishment, but you are to succeed in this mission without mistake, or his punishment would be doubled." Although a one-day deduction from long-size punishment was not what Gu Shijio had wanted, it was not too bad either. One must know that to spend a mere minute in the distant Fireland is an experience of unmitigated agony. When Huang Tu turned his back, Gu Shijio asked, "My lord has shifted a lot of tasks that were supposed to be conducted by celestial masters to me. Do you not want that identity anymore?" Huang Tu paused for a while. He remarked lightly, "I've grown sick of that identity," and left. The house restored its former quietude. Gu Shijio closed her eyes and sat for a while, laughing lightly. Grown sick of that identity. So he could just throw it away without any sentiments? Indeed, Di Fui was just one of his many incarnations. He has already lived for so many years and taken so many identities. How could Di Fui be the only identity he has thrown away? Of course, whatever Di Fui had experienced or felt would be cast away along with his identity, without any attachments. A god is indeed a god, without any emotions or heart. He is more detached from the world than Buddha. She shook her head. She should not be thinking about these things anymore. She took out the booklet used for testing the Heaven's Gift disciples and focused on studying its content. She would succeed for her friends, for those she wished to protect. The 20th day of the first month. The sky was clear with a light breeze. A good day for the veneration of the dead and groundbreaking. The open heaven stage had opened again after an interim of 5 years. The last time it was opened was 10 years ago, which was for Yun Qingluo, and the time before that was for Gu Shijio. The interval between the two openings was not long. The memories of the tests remained fresh in the memories of many of the citizens of the Facian Kingdom and became a subject of conversation when it came to their minds. Now that the news of the reopening of the open heaven stage had spread to the country, the citizens were brimming with elation. When they heard that the host for the test this time would be the celestial master Gu Shijio, their excitement was augmented to a pure effervescence. Early in the morning, the citizens both old and young flocked to the open heaven stage. Before the event had begun, the open space below the stage was already pullulating with people. The hawkers took advantage of this occasion to sell confectionery and snacks. It was much more bustling than the time when Gu Shijio was being tested. The person who was being tested this time was a black-shirted young man from the Zhaoyang Kingdom named Hua Qifang. He had stayed in the post house after arriving in the Facian Kingdom. He had thought that he would be tested on the 15th of the first month and did not expect to wait for a whole extra 5 days. Chapter 1648. The young black-shirt boy spent those 5 days like a cat on a hot tin roof. Uncertainty, excitement, anxiety, fear, all types of emotions billowed in his chest. Of course, he did not sleep well. What this resulted in was dark circles under his eyes when he came to the open heaven stage in Mu Feng's ship. The boisterous crowd made him more anxious and caused his feet to shiver. "Get down." When the ship landed on the stage, Mu Feng patted Hua Qifang's shoulder, leading to his astonishment, and almost caused him to tumble over. He was, after all, just a child. In this situation, his limbs turned cold. He staggered when he jumped off the ship. Mu Feng shook his head secretly. For too many times he has seen those who looked like Heaven's Gift disciples. And among all of them, this child was the most ordinary and cowardly, who could not face a crowd. How could he be a Heaven's Gift disciple? How can a real Heaven's Gift disciple be that wimpy? His Majesty has arrived. A loud announcement was heard from far away. The king is coming as well. Huafangi became more anxious. Rong Jelal had indeed come with his multitude of officials in utmost grandeur. The citizens made way for them automatically. Rong Jelal went to the terrace that was specially prepared for him and sat down. The officials and citizens looked up at him and bowed down in reverence, proclaiming "Long live the king" in enthusiasm. Since Hua Qifang was not a citizen of the Facian Kingdom and seemed to be a Heaven's Gift disciple, he did not have to prostrate himself before the king and only had to bend his body slightly as a gesture. Hua Qifang stole a glance at the king when he bowed down. He saw that the king looked to be about 24 or 25 and had an extremely debonair appearance. When he slightly raised his brows and carried a light smile on his lips, one would feel as though a spring breeze had graced their face. When their gaze unintentionally locked onto each other's, Hua Qifeng immediately lowered his head with his heart beating faster. This king had a pair of faintly purple eyes. The purpleness of his irises was charismatic and pierced through his heart. Hua Qifeng did not dare to look any further and shifted his gaze away to the stage. There were only him and the four messengers on the stage. Celestial Master Zhua, who had caused him much distress, was nowhere to be seen. When would Celestial Master Zhua come? He silently asked Mu Feng. He was not used to being the center of attention, and especially not in front of such a large crowd. He wished for the test to start soon, so it can end early. As he was quite a solitary and reclusive person who did not like gossip, he did not know that the person testing him today had already changed. Mu Feng gave him a strange look. Had Celestial Master Zhua not tortured him enough? Why would he look forward to his arrival? The person testing you today is National Celestial Master Gu. At first, Hua Qifeng was startled, but then his eyes lit up. The Celestial Master we met on the road that day. Mu Feng shot him another look. This brat was typically unable to remember anyone he met, but he could recall Gu Shijio just by taking a look at her. Already a player at such a young age, Mu Feng found another flaw in him and humphed. Of course it's her. He then warned him, don't ogle at her when she comes, or someone would dig your eyes out and step on them. Hua Qifeng spoke with a straight face. I respect her and venerate her like a goddess. He added. Mu Feng was speechless by his words. The National Celestial Master has arrived, someone shouted. The crowd raised their heads and saw a white jade chariot drawn by a snow-white mythological beast flying from the east to the top of the open heaven stage. The coachman was a handsome, blue-shirted young man who was brimming with energy. He was the one who had made the announcement earlier. Chapter 1649, the curtains of the chariot opened, and a lady appeared on the shaft of the carriage. Her long hair cascaded over her shoulders like a waterfall, while her ink-black robe that concealed her fair body revealed her charming grace. Even though she did not have any other accessories than the ribbon on her head, she did not look as though she took no care of her appearance. The ink-black robe augmented her chilly attitude, and she emanated an air of cold detachment. The sun hung high behind her back and seemed to illuminate her surroundings with a light silvery halo, causing the hearts of the crowd to shudder and fixate their gaze on her. National Celestial Master. The crowd cheered frantically with excitement. Hua Qifeng's eyes glowed brighter. He did not prostrate himself before the king just now. But when he saw Gu Shijio descending lightly from the carriage, he bowed down on all fours as though he had seen a goddess. Gu Shijio alighted gracefully and swept her gaze across the stage. She saw the four messengers and the pillars on the stage. Her eyes glimmered slightly. She was no stranger to this place. She had been tested here some 10 years ago, except now she was the tester. It was already water under the bridge. She had no need to remember it anymore. Gu Shijio conducted matters in a direct manner and had not spoken much after she came. Her gaze shifted to Hua Qifeng. She saw that this child was looking at her anxiously with his face red and legs shivering. It was obvious that he was distraught. Looking at him, she remembered herself being in that same situation some 10 years ago. She was anxious at that time as well, but she had mental strength and was able to conceal her feelings. The memory of her being alone and helpless on that stage was still fresh in her mind. Gu Shijio asked Hua Qifeng a few standard questions that were asked every time one tests a Heaven's Gift disciple. Her style was different from Di Fui's. Di Fui hosted the tests with an aloof yet menacing aura that would cause the craven to cry in terror. Almost everyone who had been tested by him before is afraid of him, like mice to cats. Although Gu Shijio appeared to be remote, she was gentle when she questioned and carried a soothing power in her voice. Though Hua Qifeng initially stuttered when he answered the questions, after a short exchange of words with Gu Shijio, he managed to quell his anxiety and go through the segment with confidence. Gu Zijia's heart was slightly moved after she finished asking the questions. The questions that she had asked were those that were compulsory as dictated in the booklet given to her by Di Fui. Of course, the way she was to ask those questions was up to her improvisation. Although she did not think much of Hua Qifeng at the start, a strange thought began to emerge in her mind after asking those questions. What if this brat was an actual Heaven's Gift disciple? No wonder Di Fui would bring him for the test. Maybe he was uncertain as well. It was her first time hosting the trial. Although it involved a lot of complicated procedures, she followed through all of the steps with utmost order and adroit skill. Mu Feng and a few others knew that it was only since yesterday that she had handled these matters and were prepared to cover up for her in case of any mistakes. But when they saw her next series of actions, they were taken in awe. She executed the series of intricate and spiritual power-depleting actions flawlessly. The crowd watched from below in silence. Chapter 1650. Rongjiao was observing Gu Shijio with a smile. He seemed happy and relieved about something. When the 5 colored rays were emitted from the spiritual pillar and engulfed Hua Qifeng, the entire square with tens of thousands of people were in complete silence. They could easily hear it if a needle fell on the floor. The 5 color rays whirled around Hua Qifeng, and 4 of them disappeared. However, the green rays influxed Hua Qifeng's body, and he glowed in green. The green light then moved around his body and disappeared a few minutes later. Gu Shijio glimpsed at Hua Qifeng with surprise and relief. Finally, she announced, he is a Heaven's Gift disciple who cultivates the wood element of spiritual power. It shocked everyone at the scene. The entire square that was initially quiet was filled with thunderous applause and cheer. Some were surprised while others were still in utter shock. Mu Feng was also shocked. Although Mu Feng had witnessed countless tests conducted by Di Fui, he could not be sure whether Gu Shijio had done it correctly because the procedures were too complicated. The consequence was too severe if it was inappropriately done. In the past, many from the testee's fellow countrymen would come and support the testee whenever he or she had to be examined as a Heaven's Gift disciple. Occasionally, some of the members from the royal family would come and cheer as they found there was no reason for them to excuse themselves. However, the people from Hua Qifeng's home country did not think he was a Heaven's Gift disciple because they assumed he was insane to claim that he was a Heaven's Gift disciple in the first place. Everyone looked at him as a joke. Hence, not many people from his home country came to support him. A few people did come, and they screamed in delight after Gu Shijio made the announcement. A voice came from the crowd. This must be the first time for National Celestial Master to host the ceremony. There must be a mistake. The voice was loud enough to cover the noise from the crowd. The clear voice also lingered around everyone's ears. The crowd immediately took a glimpse and realized that it came from a scholarly young man. There were 4 more young men around him who looked below 18 years of age. Based on the way they dressed, they were probably from the Zhaoyang kingdom. Hua Qifeng's expression changed as he looked at them with his fists clenched. They were his childhood buddies. The smart young man was the most pampered prince of the emperor from the Zhaoyang kingdom. It was a surprise for him to visit. Gu Shijio gazed down at the young men. Casually, she asked, "What kind of mistake?" The young man laughed arrogantly before responding. "How could a person like Hua Qifeng be a Heaven's Gift disciple? His spiritual power is low, he has no guts, and he is irresponsible." Gu Shijio listened to him and then asked again, "I asked you what's the mistake, not your opinion about the outcome." The young man answered, "The result is wrong. That's why it's a mistake. If he is a Heaven's Gift disciple, then I also deserve to be one because my spiritual power is higher than his and am also smarter than him." He then sized up Gu Shijio with a gaze filled with contempt. Although National Celestial Master has a very high level of spiritual power as well as a high status in the Facian Kingdom, the test to identify the Heaven's Gift disciple should not be done carelessly because the future of the entire continent depends on it. Celestial Master Zhua has always been the main host of the test, and no one would doubt the result as he is trustworthy. However, National Celestial Master Gu is a rookie and a lady. Chapter 1651 The scholarly kid then looked at Mufong. Messenger Mufong, I feel this is a big deal, and it could be done in some other day. If Celestial Masters is too busy today, instead of just randomly assigning someone to conduct the test. He then made a gesture to greet Ring Jialaw. Your Majesty, I'm here to watch the test with my Emperor's instruction. Even though Hua Qifeng is from the Zhaoyang Kingdom, and we wish he could be a genuine Heaven's Gift discipline, we shouldn't let this be carried out like a game. We also wish he could be the pride of our country. However, Heaven's Gift disciple could affect the future of the entire continent. Could you please invite Celestial Master Zhua to conduct the test? It was apparent that he did not trust Gu Shijio. Besides that, what he said could influence the crowd as well. Those who have originally doubted the result would be even more doubtful now. Suddenly, loud noises could be heard from the crowd. Mufong took a glimpse at Gu Shijio. He also thought there must be a small mistake, because Hua Qifeng did not look like a Heaven's Gift disciple. He wanted to speak for Gu Shijio. However, the Lord told him that Heaven's Gift disciples were considered as immortals, and no error was tolerable. Rong Jialuo's gaze was on Gu Shijio. She had lost a lot of her spiritual power after the ritual ceremony. Hence, she looked slightly pale. However, she seemed to be calm and confident. Rong Jialuo smiled. I trust our national celestial master's abilities, and I don't think she made a mistake. Your Majesty, this is not a small matter. The society would be chaotic if a person like him could also be a Heaven's Gift disciple. I'm sure he is not. The young prince just could not let this slide. A person like him, Gu Shijio finally voiced out. However, she was talking to Mufong. Messenger Mufong, is there a rule to restrict a coward with low spiritual power to be a Heaven's Gift disciple? Mufong shook his head. None. How about the spiritual pillar at the open heaven stage? Has it malfunctioned before? Never. That's it. Since there's nothing wrong with the spiritual pillar, and I conducted the test according to all the procedures, what's there to be doubted? Hua Qifeng is a Heaven's Gift disciple. Gu Shijio was firm about her decision. Celestial Master Gu, this is the first time for you to conduct the test. How did you make sure everything was done correctly? I believe the procedures are all very complicated, and a tiny error could result in a different outcome. Messenger Mu, could you confirm that she has done everything accordingly? The young man got more pumped up with doubts. Mufong frowned because he had no way to judge. There must be no lie or mistake with regards to all the matters related to Heaven's Gift disciples. Otherwise, he would be punished by the Lord. Thus, even Mufong did not dare to claim that he could confirm. Mufong took a breath and said, her method was all right. The prince smiled. That was insufficient to prove it right. Perhaps it was not exactly right. I just feel we should get Celestial Master Zhua to conduct the test again someday. Mufong was very upset. Do you think you can just simply instruct Celestial Master Zhua? The young prince made a gesture to stop Mufong. I didn't mean that. However, it's related to the future of the entire continent. We can't just let a new Celestial Master conduct the test. We shouldn't allow for any mistakes, right? Especially now when we know for certain that there's a mistake. Mufong narrowed his eyes. What are you talking about? She might not be wrong. The young man laughed aloud as he raised his chin. I'm sure she must be wrong. If Hua Qifeng is a Heaven's Gift disciple, then so am I. Come again? A voice crept into his ears. I deserve to be a Heaven's Gift disciple. The young prince said, Oh, really? Since you claim it, you should go for a test as well. The young prince was stunned with cold sweat. He immediately lifted his head. Who is? He did not manage to continue as his gaze stopped at a direction in midair. My lord. Chapter 1652 Everyone was shocked and immediately lifted their heads. The Lord. The Lord. Gosh, it's the Lord. A man with silver hair was hovering in midair. He was wearing a snowy white robe with a jade mask covering his face as a 7-colored auspicious cloud surrounded him. That was indeed the Lord. Countless people quickly kneeled and kowtowed as they cheered. Greetings, my lord. The cheer was as strong as the waves from the ocean, and the citizens were so excited. Originally, the Lord would only appear once in a decade or a century. However, he has shown up in the Feishing Kingdom twice in the past 6 months. Moreover, he had done so publicly. Gu Shijio slightly pursed her lips as she watched him appear. However, it was difficult to identify her emotions at that moment. There was a rule practiced in the continent that the tester of the heaven's gift disciple was not required to kowtow to anyone. Therefore, Gu Zijia's back was straight. The Lord landed on the ground and took a glimpse at her. She gazed at him too. However, there was not much emotion in her gaze because she looked at him as a stranger. He narrowed his eyes because he knew that she finally got over their relationship. This girl gave her all when she was in a relationship. However, she was now completely over him. Sooner or later, the memories he tried so hard to create in her life would be wiped away. Perhaps not even a single memory could be traced. That was what he wanted. However, his heart instantly sank and fell into an abyss when he saw Gu Zijia's cold gaze. Luckily, he was used to feeling heartbroken. His gaze was filled with a smile as he looked at her. Casually, he said, "You've done a good job. There's no mistake in the test." His voice lingered around at a fast speed. Hence, everyone heard it, and all the citizens from the Feishing Kingdom immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Gu Shijio was now the pride of all the citizens in the Feishing Kingdom. Thus, most of the citizens wished she had done it correctly. However, none of them could be sure about her earlier performance. Now that the Lord has confirmed her method, they had reasons to celebrate. No one ever doubted the Lord's judgment. Hence, the citizens once again cheered for Gu Shijio after a short pause. Gu Shijio had mixed emotions. Although others might not know the Lord's temperament, she knew it very well. He often crossed the line in the past, and she was worried that he might pick on her by twisting the facts, as he probably would not let Long Sai go so easily. To her surprise, he recognized her contribution. Anyway, that was a relief for her. She then gazed further ahead at the crowd after she thanked the Lord. Long Sai was standing there to support her. He was looking at her. Both of them smiled at each other as their gazes met. They understood each other without the need of saying a word. The Lord then looked down with his fists clenched in his sleeves. Subconsciously, he wanted to do something, but he decided to let go. He immediately shifted his gaze to the young prince. Icily, he added, "Oh well, it's such a surprise to find someone who claims that he is a heaven's gift disciple at the scene of a test." Instantly, the face of the young prince turned pale. He immediately kneeled on the ground, and his body was trembling. "My lord, oh no, humbly I was just making a metaphor. A metaphor? Do you think you can't simply make a metaphor about matters related to heaven's gift disciples?" The young prince was stammered while plenty of sweat rolled down from his forehead. Chapter 1653. The young prince stammered while plenty of sweat rolled down from his forehead as he continuously kowtowed. "My lord, please spare my life. My emperor father is aged. His majesty is waiting for me to return home." The Lord did not bother him. Mufeng walked forward with a smile. "This is such a fruitful day. We not only got a real heaven's gift disciple, but also found a new prospect. Come on, let's get a test done so that you can experience the feeling of being judged by 1,000,000 people." He then threw the young prince up to the stage. The young man peed in the pants out of fear. I'm really not. I was just careless with my words. My emperor father." "Stop talking about your emperor father." Mufeng interrupted. "Your emperor father still has many other princes. You're not the only one who can serve him. You're going to be his biggest pride if you're a heaven's gift disciple." "Oh gosh, what's the smell?" Mufeng glimpsed at his wet pants. "You peed? Gosh, it seems like your gut is not that big either." The young prince was embarrassed and yet fearful to the extent he could not get up. The Lord's gaze returned to Gu Shijio. "Test him." Gu Shijio was speechless. Did he not know it consumed a lot of spiritual power to activate the spiritual pillar? She had already lost a third of her spiritual power during the test earlier. If she tests the young prince again, did he think she was a robot? Moreover, she only agreed to test Huichi Fong. She did not promise to examine this random man. Unfortunately, He was giving her an order with the identity of the Lord. She might get herself into trouble if she rejected his request publicly. Also, she was indeed upset with the young prince and wanted to teach him a lesson. Thus, she smiled as she suggested a condition which both of them understood. Get rid of another day. The Lord gazed at her. He was surprised that she never forgot to ask some benefits for Long Sai. Back then, she vomited blood because of his ruthless. Secondly, she felt she had got Long Sai into trouble. Thus, her lengthy coma was probably due to the combination of guilt and regret in her heart. Those days, she was often depressed. However, it was rare to see her having a good mood today as she finally found somewhere to release her tantrum. He pondered. Half a day. The punishment for Long Sai to stay in the mysterious Fireland was compulsory. 2 hours. Gu Shijio tried to bargain because she did not want to miss any chance. The Lord was speechless. That was the first time in his life to know someone who dared to negotiate with him. If it were someone else, he would have been thrown into space. However, it was her. Fine. 3 hours. The Lord said with a dull tone. Nothing less than that. Gu Shijio was finally happy. She decided not to cross the line. However, Mu Feng and the rest did not seem to understand any of the content because they could not stop looking at each other. What kind of silent riddle they were talking about? What did it have to do with 1 day, half a day, 2 hours, and 3 hours? The young prince immediately felt numb when Gu Shijio glimpsed at him. All of his aura of arrogance instantly disappeared as he kowtowed to Gu Shijio. National Celestial Master. His tone was filled with entreat because he wished that Gu Shijio could spare him from the test. Women are always kind-hearted, and their hair is always more than their knowledge. Women should just stay at home to sew and serve the men. That was the mindset of the young prince. Thus, that was what he had to do to make Gu Shijio feel sympathetic. Therefore, he could not stop seeking her forgiveness while he kowtowed. However, Gu Shijio remained silent as she watched him kowtow repeatedly. Chapter 1654. Gu Shijio only spoke when his forehead almost bled. However, she was talking to the Lord. Can I use another way to test this person? The Lord slightly nodded. As long as it's correct, you can use any method you want. Gu Shijio heaved a sigh of relief. The small note given by Di Fui had many different methods to test Heaven's Gift disciples. Using the open heaven stage was one of the most complicated ways, and it consumed a lot of spiritual power. Unless the tester had 70% confidence, Celestial Master Zwo would not simply get them to the stage back in the old days. Certainly, Gu Shijio was an exception. Gu Shijio filtered all the information in her head and finally picked one which did not require much of her spiritual power. She then told the young prince with a smile, "You don't have to go to the stage. I have a better method for you." The young prince's eyes immediately sparkled. He thought his strategy was finally effective. Everything could be discussed as long as he did not have to be watched and judged in public. After all, it was not easy to deal with the pillar. If she used another method, it was also easy for her to skip some procedures. Indeed, the alternative method was very simple. Gu Shijio checked his pulse with a curtain between the two of them. According to the note, Heaven's Gift disciples had a very similar, unique pulse rate. The details of the pulse rates were recorded in the note. One might not be a Heaven's Gift disciple, even if he or she possessed such pulse rates. However, all the Heaven's Gift disciples also had such a unique pulse rate. Therefore, it was better for her to use this method first before needing to resort to the pillar. The young prince had a relatively good spiritual power. However, his pulse rate was normal. Therefore, in less than a minute, Gu Shijio concluded, he is not a Heaven's Gift disciple. The young prince was speechless, but went into a frenzy. It was too rash. It was really too rash. Hua Qifeng was just the son of a typical general, but he could be tested on the open heaven stage. While this young prince was the most pampered prince of the Zhaoyang kingdom, a prince was so much nobler than the son of a general. How could she conclude he was not a Heaven's Gift disciple by only checking his pulse rate? The young prince felt it was an insult to him and immediately protested. The buddies he brought along also followed him to protest. Some people were reckless with their words, and they even claimed that Celestial Master Gu was trying to take revenge. It was chaos at the scene. Gu Shijio casually said when everyone was done shouting, "Not convincing enough? You have to bear with it, even if it's not convincing. I'm the one who makes the call here." The young prince has never been insulted like this in his life. His face immediately turned green. Gu Shijio was the national celestial master of the Feishan kingdom instead of the Zhaoyang kingdom. Why would she have the authority to say so? Anger made him forget about the fear. He turned around and kowtowed to the Lord. "My lord, this is too rash. Celestial Master Gu is taking revenge. My lord must seek justice for me." The Lord took a glimpse at him. One would not hire someone he did not trust, and one should trust the one he hired. Since I've appointed her to conduct the test, I shall leave it to her to handle it. Since she has concluded that you're not a Heaven's Gift disciple, you're certainly not. The young prince went speechless. The audience looked at each other. Apparently, the Lord was on Gu Zijia's side. Perhaps he intended to train Gu Shijio. Those imperial officers even had better speculations. They claimed that Celestial Master Zhua was too high profile, which made the Lord's image look weak. He was seen as a threat to the Lord's status. Hence, he has been banished from the role. Furthermore, Celestial Master Zhua has gone missing for 8 years, and that indirectly led to the counterfeit Celestial Master Zhua to endanger the continent and cause such big chaos. Perhaps the Lord must be very upset with Celestial Master Zhua. That must be the reason the Lord wanted to train Gu Shijio. Chapter 1655. Sooner or later, Celestial Master Gu might replace Celestial Master Zhua. It seemed that Lady Luck was smiling down on Gu Shijio. However, she also put in a lot of effort to achieve a level 10 spiritual power. Thus, there are not many competitors on this continent now. Perhaps the responsibilities of this continent would soon be Gu Zijia's, and Celestial Master Zhua would be the past. Since the Lord spoke for Gu Shijio publicly, the rest had certainly no courage to doubt the result, and they did not dare to share any opinions anymore. Mu Feng brought the young prince out right away, as he must be sent to the dark forest according to the rules. Countless pairs of eyes were gazing at Gu Shijio. Some seemed to be relieved, and some were envious. Regardless, another test was over. Before leaving, Gu Shijio courteously bowed to the Lord after a complete and flawless ceremony. She then leaped down from the stage without turning back to look at him. Many of her friends were waiting for her in the crowd. Instantly, she was hugged and congratulated. Some were cheering for her in the distance. The Lord was still standing on the stage as he watched her leave with her friends. He knew that from now onward, he had nothing to do with all of her emotions, and there was no spot for him in her world. It was him who pushed her away. Hence, this was a natural consequence. While she was depressed from the heartbreak, he was not happy either. Although he did not have countless nightmares like Gu Shijio, he had no one to speak to even though he was just by her side. When she was sad, at least she had friends as her companions. While he was always alone, he turned around and left without turning back. "My lord, I don't get it. Are you trying to push all of Celestial Masters with responsibilities to Miss Gu?" Mu Feng impatiently asked when he saw Di Fui emerge from the stargazing lab. Di Fui slightly nodded. "Why not? So, you had decided to give up this identity?" Mu Feng asked again. "I'm tired of it." Di Fui said only 4 words. Mu Feng was depressed. All the 4 messengers had worked for the Lord about 500 to 600 years. They knew him very well. The Lord was good in everything. However, he got tired or bored very easily regardless what he did. Thus, he had to create many different identities to wander around the world. However, there must be a main identity for each period. For example, he has been using Di Fui in the recent century. While he was a powerful king regent who was hated by the people 100 years ago. When the 4 of them were recruited a long time ago, he was a hermit who did not get involved in any matter. He would get bored after carrying a particular identity for a period, and then he would find a way to make that identity disappear. Later, he would create another one to replace it and then inherited it to the next generation. However, the Lord would usually create a new identity to slowly replace the previous one when he got bored, which means he would not pass his main responsibilities to others, but would still execute his mission with a new identity. Surprisingly, he decided to pass all the authorities of Celestial Master, Swa, to Gushijio. What is the Lord trying to do this time? Although the Lord was often unpredictable and always confused others, Mufeng thought he understood the Lord and was able to understand a little more of his mind most of the time, as he has been his follower for a few centuries. However, he had no idea this time. Finally, he asked after holding back for the whole day, "My Lord, we can understand that you're bored with your current identity, but what makes you pass all the authorities to Miss Gu?" Difui was sipping his tea in front of a small tea table. He was gazing at the moon and did not seem to care about the question. Chapter 1656. I told you that I'm tired of those tasks. Since Gu Shijio is a talent in this era, might as well let her manage everything without worries. I remembered that you also agreed that she's intelligent and able to handle all these tasks. Mufeng remained silent. This was the first time that he realized the Lord was tired of the authorities he had. According to the modern logic for Miss Gu, was the Lord planning to retire? That's not possible, right? The Lord would never get old. He was an immortal, and he would live as long as heaven and earth existed. Perhaps the Lord was tired after so many centuries of work. Hence, it was normal if he wanted to take a break. However, Mufeng still felt that something was not right, but he could not tell what exactly was wrong. Suddenly, he shifted his gaze to the Lord's hair. The silver hair was as white as snow. Occasionally, the Lord's hair would turn silver, such as when he practiced his spiritual power. However, he has only ever shown up publicly with black hair, and only the 4 of them have ever seen him with silver hair. Strangely, the Lord liked to appear in public with his silver hair nowadays. "My Lord, your hair?" The Lord took a sip of the tea. "What's wrong with my hair? It's always white. I look more handsome with silver hair, I suppose." He then took another sip of tea after answering cheekily. Mufeng was speechless. Fine, it seems that the Lord's preference has changed again. Anyway, he did look handsome with silver hair. In addition to the Lord's hair turning white, his spiritual power had also been upgraded again since he returned from his private meditation in the Biwu Palace. There is no difference between the Lord who sat in front of Mufeng today and the one in the prime of his life. The Lord continued to drink the tea while Mufeng made a report to him. "My Lord, our spies are keeping an eye on the palace. However, they have not noticed anything strange about Rong Jialoa because he runs his activities according to his daily routines. Other than that, he is always having discussions with the imperial officers during their meeting. Although some evil wraiths were trying to make a mess in the palace a while ago, it sounded like everything is fine in the palace after the salvation ceremony performed by Miss Gu. Since then, no one heard about the evil wraiths. Moreover, Rong Jialoa has not recruited any concubines. Hence, the internal court is very quiet. Most of the courtyards are empty, and even if they are occupied, it's probably the concubines of the former emperor. There are not many royal maidservants. Hence, the population in the palace is only half of the head count compared to his father's administration. He's considered a hard-working emperor. Our crew has been observing for some time and didn't find any evil spirits. Nothing is wrong with him as well. That was the first thing Mufeng reported. The Lord spun the teacup in his hand. He has no concubine, so where does he sleep every night? Huxin Palace. Our secret agents always guard the door in the dark after watching him sleep, and they never see him walk out the palace after that. He wakes up at around 5 a.m. every morning to get ready for his imperial meeting. Without exception, the eunuchs, the maids, and the imperial officers are always with him. What about the few hours when he was asleep? No one wanted to check. They did, he was fast asleep. The Lord did not speak anymore, but pondered. There's also nothing much about the Blue Fox family. The prince from the Blue Fox royal family, Lan Yu, has been busy preparing for his wedding. However, his bride fled last night. Thus, the Blue Fox family is looking for her everywhere. They have not found her. The Lord put down the teacup and smiled after a second. I didn't expect her to have the guts to do so. Mu Feng also nodded. I was shocked too. She's always cowardly and an obedient person. He then sighed. She has not laid Yin Chen down. Perhaps she was getting more fearful as the wedding was just around the corner. Finally, she decided to risk everything. It's not easy to lay down feelings if you love someone. Chapter 1657. That was ruthless. But of course, Mu Feng did not say it out. He mumbled silently. The Lord glimpsed at him. Have you truly loved someone before? Mu Feng was speechless. He felt like he had been shocked at a high voltage. The Lord got up and took a glance around. He has been staying in Celestial Masters' mansion for a few decades. It was the time to demolish it. Mu Feng, dismiss everyone in the mansion. We don't need them anymore. Mu Feng paused before answering. Yes. The Lord turned around and left. Mu Feng looked around too. Suddenly, he did not feel good inside. When the Lord decided to give up an identity, he would also destroy everything that belonged to that identity. For example, the mansion, the servants, and his friends. Now, it was time to demolish Celestial Masters' mansion. There are not many people left in Celestial Masters' mansion, because most of them were dead from the incident caused by the counterfeit. Thus, less than 20% of them survived. Besides that, Di Fui was extremely busy since he returned from the Forbidden Land. Hence, he did not recruit any more servants because he hardly stayed at home. Mu Feng was thinking to start the recruitment again when his lord settled down. However, it seemed to be unnecessary now, as he even needed to dismiss the current ones. Compared to Celestial Masters' mansion, Gu Zijia's mansion was extremely happening and crowded these days. Many people came to congratulate her. Gu Shijio would courteously meet them if she were free. However, she would also reject them outright when she was busy. She received news the next day after the test for the Heaven's Gift disciple that Celestial Master Zhua had tendered his resignation letter as Celestial Master Zhua to His Majesty, and none of the imperial officers or the emperor managed to keep him in his position. Gu Shijio was having a drink with her friends when she got the news. She was stunned for a second as she held the glass. However, she did not express any opinion. Gu Zijia's friends always felt it was unfair for Celestial Master Zhua to betray her. Thus, everyone applauded and cheered when they heard the news. They even claimed that Celestial Master Zhua must be jealous of her being too strong to the point where she even surpassed him. Hence, he decided to resign. Shijio, he must be very jealous since the Lord prioritizes you very much now. What's there to be jealous about? It's normal for new people to replace old ones. It's time for him to make way for others. Shijio, you must try harder. You must show him your abilities and let him know you can compete with him or be even better than him. Many were laughing and judging, and all of them thought the brat deserved the karma of being replaced. Gu Shijio continued sipping her drinks after a short idle. Casually, she said, perhaps he doesn't even care about this. It seemed that he decided to give up the identity of Di Fui. He wanted to get rid of everything related to Di Fui. The power, the status, and even the relationship. He was just like a professional actor, and Di Fui was the character he needed to play. All the emotions of the character would have to go as the script ended. He retreated handsomely and would not leave a space for this character in his heart. Unfortunately, she fell in love with the character in the drama. Who would he be after he gave up the identity of Celestial Master? So would he use another identity? Anyway, she had nothing to do with this man anymore. She remembered Mu Feng once mentioned that the Lord would change his identity once in a while. However, no one would remember him again when he changed his identity except the 4 messengers. She lifted her hand and finished the cold wine. When she was about to say something, the directed audio spell at her waist suddenly blinked. She picked up the call at a quiet corner, and her face immediately changed after she listened to the first 2 phrases. Chapter 1658. Yin Chan was on the other end of the spell. Urgently, Yin Chan asked, Shijio, is Little Fox with you now? Gu Shijio was a little nervous. I thought she had gone to the Blue Fox family. She should be preparing for her wedding now. She fled from the wedding. Gu Shijio remained silent as her head went blank. Gu Shijio just had a call with the little fox, and she told her she was busy preparing for her wedding. Little Fox was always a happy girl who did not like sharing her sorrows. Gu Shijio did not expect the relationship between her and Lan Yu to have developed so fast. Thus, she asked, "Do you love him?" Little Fox remained silent for a while before she responded. "I like him," said Little Fox. Under those circumstances, it was not right for Gu Shijio to confuse her. However, she reminded Little Fox to be serious with her marriage and hoped that she would not do something that she would later regret. Of course, in the end, she wished for her to be happy. Throughout their conversation, Little Fox told her that the wedding fell on the 26th of this month. Gu Shijio also planned to depart for her marriage in a few days. To her surprise, Little Fox fled. It was shocking to know that such an obedient person like Little Fox could do something so reckless. Gu Shijio was very surprised, and she finally had a rough idea about the details after talking to Yin Shun. The little fox ran away the day before yesterday, and she did not tell anyone but left a letter for Lan Yu. However, Yin Shun did not know the content because Lan Yu did not mention it. Lan Yu was the king of the Blue Fox family. However, his bride ran away just a few days before their grand wedding. Lan Yu was furious and ordered his people to seal the news from leaking out. He also sent a crew of secret agents to find Lan Weihu because he wanted to bring her back to his place secretly. To Lan Yu, Lan Weihu was a naive girl with no ill intention. Hence, she would probably leave something behind for people to find her when she escaped. The secret agents from the Blue Fox family were very experienced. They believed that they would be able to locate her within 2 days. To their surprise, they still could not find anything even after a thorough 2-day search. Lan Weihu had indeed left the Blue Fox family. All obvious signs had disappeared at a street, as though an expert helped her to escape. Finally, Lan Yu thought about Yin Shun after 2 days of searching. He thought Yin Shun was the culprit behind the incident. Hence, he immediately contacted Yin Shun and questioned him about Lan Weihu's whereabouts. In fact, Yin Shun was in a dilemma for the past few days. He felt sorry for Little Fox. He did not dare to ask her back, and yet, he could not lay her down as well. He was very depressed when he heard about her wedding. He could not decide whether he should stop her. Surprisingly, before he could make a decision, he received news that Little Fox had run away. He was so relieved yet anxious when he got the news. Thus, he also began to look for her. After all, he knew Little Fox quite well. She had no family, and she was not a brave girl. Therefore, she would probably contact her friends, Gu Shijio, or himself when she ran away. The biggest possibility was Tianju Hall. Therefore, he immediately contacted the people in Tianju Hall. However, none of her friends in Tianju Hall were aware of this incident. He then continued to contact everyone who knew Little Fox, but no one has seen her. Lastly, he contacted Gu Shijio. Unfortunately, Gu Shijio was not aware of this as well. Yin Chen's voice has changed. Little Fox was different from Gu Shijio. Gu Shijio would not rely on anyone if she fled from her wedding. She would just find somewhere quiet and continue living in a place where no one knew her. It was normal even if they could not find her after a year. However, Little Fox was completely different. She was naive and cowardly. It was almost impossible for her to hide and avoid all of the secret agents as well. Chapter 1659. Perhaps she was caught in an accident. If Yin Shin could relate to that, Gu Shijio could certainly think about it too. Thus, her expression changed. What accident would Little Fox get into? Who was the one who helped her to escape? What was his intention? The image of Lan Weihu crying out of fear after being kidnapped seemed to appear in front of Gu Shijio. She was terrified. The little fox was one of the people she cared for very much. She had to find her as soon as possible. Therefore, she first contacted Li Mengxia from the Inning Association to assist her in finding Little Fox. Certainly, Li Mengxia would never reject her request. She immediately went out to investigate. Gu Shijio then contacted Lan Yu and asked for more details about Lan Weihu before and after she had gone missing. She made sure he did not miss out a single detail. In the end, she made a summary. First, Lan Weihu was probably having depression after she returned to the Blue Fox family with Lan Yu. She was the daughter of the Blue Fox National Master, and supposedly the heir to the throne of the National Master. Thus, she was pushed up to the throne by Lan Yu not long after they returned to the Blue Fox clan, since her kung fu was powerful enough. Also, she accepted the obeisance made by the Blue Fox citizens. However, she was very nervous and stressed because she did not want the responsibilities. She could not handle the responsibilities as a national master, and she was irritated by all the works she had to do to the extent she had plenty of nightmares. Secondly, she was not good at socializing, and she had the bloodline of an ordinary human. Hence, she was often discriminated by the nobles in the Blue Fox family. She felt as though she was forced to take up the responsibilities, and at the same time, countless pairs of eyes were watching her because they wanted to get her into trouble and watch her fall. Unfortunately, she was not good at handling those problems and eventually was embarrassed for messing everything up. She had almost zero friends in the Blue Fox clan other than 2 maidservants who were quite close to her. While Lan Yu began to get himself busy with all the administrative matters of the Blue Fox family, he did not notice the difficulties Lan Weihu was facing that resulted in her being the loneliest national master in the Blue Fox family. Third, Lan Weihu was always protective and alert. With the wizardry barrier outside, no one was allowed to enter or exit. This included outsiders, as well as the people from the Blue Fox family. Only 2 people knew how to control the wizardry barrier, Lan Yu and the chief officer of defense. It was impossible for Lan Yu to have helped her escape. However, she did not know the chief officer. Hence, how did Lan Weihu manage to run away without triggering any of the alarms? There is absolutely no trace of her left behind. Gu Shijio made a daring inference based on the 3 points above. Next, Lan Yu interrogated the 2 maidservants. Meanwhile, Gu Shijio rushed to the Blue Fox family with Windcaller. For hours later, Lan Yu updated that something was strange about one of the maidservants. Both of them were originally the most reliable maidservants beside Lan Yu. He assigned them to serve Lan Weihu and also watched her at the same time. However, he did not ask the 2 maidservants to be close to Lan Weihu, but only keep an eye on her just in case she ran away or got into trouble. In the beginning, the 2 maidservants kept a distance from Lan Weihu according to Lan Yu's order. However, one of them was getting closer to Lan Weihu. Since Lan Weihu was lonely and depressed, she treated the maidservants better when they were nice to her. Eventually, they talked about almost everything to the extent that Lan Weihu allowed the maidservant to stay in her room at night. Chapter 1660, since Little Fox had gone missing, the maidservant denied that she was ever close to Little Fox. She even lost part of her memories, and she could not recall what she had shared with Little Fox. 2 hours later, Gu Shijio arrived at the trail in the forest with Windcaller. Lan Yu and Yinshin were there, and both of them were panicking like ants in a hot pot. They were lingering around on the trail to find clues. However, they did not manage to find any. The 2 of them looked as though they had found a treasure and quickly rushed over as they saw Gu Shijio. Gu Shijio had no time to question the 2 of them because she asked Lan Yu to bring the maidservant and the chief officer of defense along for an interrogation. The 2 of them came in a very brief time. After a series of questions, the maidservant looked helpless while the chief officer looked suspicious. There seemed to be no flaw according to their answers, and both of them claimed that they did not know each other. Gu Shijio did not say much, but released the mussel and tapped on its shell. "Here, read their memories." The maidservant quickly agreed, while the chief officer refused to comply. Something must be wrong. Now, Lan Yu and Yin Shun began to suspect him. Lan Yu decided to interrogate the man by himself. Finally, the chief officer of defense told the truth. He said that both he and the maidservant had a special relationship since a month ago. The maidservant would visit him every 3 to 5 days, and they would chit-chat while playing chess. He liked the maidservant. Hence, he secretly opened the main gate of the Blue Fox family for the maidservant and another girl the night before yesterday. The chief officer continuously nodded as he finished and claimed that he did not know the girl who left with the maidservant was the future empress of the Blue Fox family. Otherwise, he would never have let them out. Lan Yu's face turned green, and he immediately glared at the maidservant. She shouted and claimed that she was innocent. She even said that she did not know the chief officer, and she never sneaked out to date the chief officer. The chief officer had wronged her. The maidservant and the chief officer seemed to fall into a fight soon. Good Shijio waved to hint at them to be silent, and then ordered the muscle to read their minds. From a muscle's analysis, the maidservant really did not date the chief officer, while the chief officer indeed had a special relationship with the maidservant according to their respective memories. Lan Yu was confused as he glimpsed at Gu Shijio and then took a glance at the muscle. Has your muscle malfunctioned? Can it really read minds? The muscle was pissed off. You are the one who has malfunctioned. You're useless. I've never made a mistake in this era. Gu Shijio lightly took a breath and asked Lan Yu to retain them. After they left with the guard, Gu Shijio continued, if I am not mistaken, the maidservant was possessed at night and then went out to seduce the chief officer. Instantly, Lan Yu and Yinshen were shocked. Lan Yu quickly asked, how is it possible? Who could do this? Wu Yen. Gu Shijio answered succinctly. Yinshen's expression immediately changed. You mean the lady who camouflaged you? Gu Shijio slightly nodded. If there is no mistake in my rationale, she's the one who kidnapped Little Fox. Yinshen was speechless while his face turned pale. Back then, Wu Yan worked under Mo Zhao, and she once possessed Gu Zijia's original body to seek an opportunity to kill Di Fui. However, their plan was unraveled, and in the end, Di Fui ruined their plan. Yinshen knew most of the details of the incident. Hence, his heart immediately sank as he heard that she was the one who kidnapped Little Fox. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.